Bulls cut Ivy. In March 2026, the Chicago Bulls waived Jaden Ivey. The official reason was conduct detrimental to the team. But here's where it gets interesting. Ivey had been doing extended Instagram live streams, one of them running nearly an hour long, where he repeatedly criticized the NBA's Pride Month celebrations and called them unrighteousness. He also made additional comments about religion during those streams. Now remember, the Bulls had just acquired him in a 3-team trade. He only appeared in 4 games for Chicago before they cut him. He was already sidelined with a knee injury at the time, so he wasn't even actively practicing with the squad. Head coach Billy Donovan made it clear that the organization expects respect and professionalism, emphasizing that the Bulls employ people from all different walks of life. Ivey's comments didn't line up with those internal standards, and the team moved fast. After being waived, Ivey responded publicly and questioned why the Bulls didn't directly address his stance in their statement. He entered the league as the 5th overall pick in the 2022 draft. He showed real promise with Detroit before injuries started stacking up. By the time Chicago released him, he was heading straight into free agency with a cloud over his situation. The whole thing went from viral to done in a matter of days. KD to DC. In 2015, Nike dropped Kevin Durant merchandise featuring Washington, D.C. themes. We're talking shirts with the Capitol building, the Washington Monument, and D.C. flag imagery printed right on them. The branding matched exactly with what fans were already calling the KD to DC movement. Durant is a DC native, and his free agency was coming in 2016. Wizards fans weren't being subtle about it either. They showed up to games with custom jerseys, handmade banners, and signs reading KD to DC 2016 that made it onto Live broadcasts. Then Nike dropped those shirts, and people went sideways with the speculation. Observers pointed out there were no Oklahoma City-themed equivalents. That detail alone made the theory feel less like a coincidence and more like a signal. Fans started treating the merchandise drop like unofficial confirmation that Durant had approved the designs personally. Social media picked it up immediately and ran with it. The KD to DC narrative became one of the biggest storylines of that entire era, turning what could have been a normal marketing release into a full-blown NBA conspiracy discussion. The speculation lasted all the way until his free agency decision, when Durant chose Golden State instead, leaving DC fans with some very expensive shirts and 0 point guard help. Shaq's note: the 1995 NBA Finals ended with the Houston Rockets sweeping the Orlando Magic in 4 games. Shaq took that loss personally, and not just as a team result. He felt he had something to prove against Hakeem specifically. So after the series ended, Shaq didn't just move on. He didn't make a comment in a press conference or post anything publicly. He wrote a typewritten letter, signed it himself, and had it physically delivered to Hakeem. The letter challenged Hakeem to a one-on-one matchup. That's not a casual thing. That's Shaq sitting down, putting a formal challenge in writing, and sending it directly to the player who just beat him on the biggest stage. The whole thing reflected exactly where Shaq's mindset was at that point in his career. He later described Hakeem as one of the only players he genuinely couldn't intimidate. The finals loss pushed him to train harder and develop more footwork and post skill. That development contributed directly to what he became with the Los Angeles Lakers, where he won 3 consecutive championships starting in 2000. The note itself became one of the most unique post-finals moments in NBA history. Most players accept a series loss and move on. Shaq mailed a challenge. By the way, if you guys want to subscribe, I'm going to be posting every day. Thanks. Anyways, Barcelona versus Lakers. On October 7th, 2010, FC Barcelona defeated the Los Angeles Lakers 92-88 in Barcelona, Spain during the NBA Europe Live Tour. The Lakers weren't some random squad on a vacation trip. They were the defending NBA champions, having won back-to-back titles in 2009 and 2010. The roster included Kobe Bryant, Paul, Lamar Odom, and Ron Artest. Barcelona had Juan Carlos Navarro, Ricky Rubio, Pete Mikkel, and Erazem Lorbeck. The Lakers led through much of the game, but Barcelona outscored them 24-18 in the fourth quarter to close it out. Navarro hit threes, Mikkel contributed from the perimeter, and Barcelona just wouldn't fold. The Lakers finished that European preseason trip 0-2 overall. That's the reigning champs, with most of their main rotation available, losing to a EuroLeague team on back-to-back occasions. It's one of the rare documented cases where a EuroLeague squad beat an NBA champion in a game where the NBA team actually suited up properly. It didn't affect their regular season at all. They still went on to win 67 games that year. But the result itself is genuinely one of the wildest outcomes in NBA preseason history. Kareem coin flip. On March 19th, 1969, at NBA offices in New York, Commissioner J. Walter Kennedy conducted a coin flip between the Milwaukee Bucks and Phoenix Suns to decide the number 1 overall pick in the NBA draft. Both were expansion teams. The Suns finished 16-66 that season. The Bucks went 27-55. Phoenix won the right to call the flip. They called heads. The coin landed tails. Milwaukee won. The Bucks selected Lou Alcindor. Phoenix took Neil Walk with the second pick. Alcindor averaged 8.8 points, and 14.5 rebounds as a rookie. And Milwaukee improved from 27 wins to 56 wins in a single season. 2 years later, they won the 1971 NBA championship. Alcindor changed his name to Kareem in 1971 and went on to become the NBA's all-time leading scorer at the time of his retirement. Neil Walk had a perfectly fine career, but never became anything close to that level. Phoenix called heads, the coin said no, and that single flip directly determined the trajectory of 2 franchises and produced the most decorated big man in NBA history. 1 coin, 2 completely different futures. Melo versus LeBron. During the 2012 to 2013 NBA season, LeBron James won the MVP award with 120 out of 121 possible first-place votes. The one vote he didn't get went to Carmelo Anthony. That single vote prevented LeBron from becoming the first unanimous MVP in NBA history. Carmelo that season averaged 28.7 points per game, led the entire league in scoring, won the scoring title, and led the New York Knicks to a 54-28 record and second place in the Eastern Conference. He had multiple 40-point games, a 50-point game against Miami, and a stretch of 30 or more consecutive 20-point games that set a Knicks franchise record. LeBron's season was also historic. He averaged 26.8 points, 8 rebounds, and 7.3 assists, shot over 56% from the field, and led the Miami Heat to a 66-16 record, including a 27-game win streak, the second longest in NBA history. And still, one voter chose Carmelo. That decision delayed the first unanimous MVP in league history by 3 full years. It finally happened in 2016 when Steph Curry won the award with every single first-place vote available. Melo didn't win the MVP that year, but he did make sure LeBron didn't either. Swamp Dragons. In the mid-1990s, the New Jersey Nets pursued a full rebrand. Team president John Spoelstra pushed the initiative. The franchise had almost no identity and sat near the bottom of the league in merchandise sales. Ownership, a group known as the Secaucus 7, approved the change internally. The new name was the Swamp Dragon, inspired by the Meadowlands. The NBA spent roughly $500,000 developing full branding, including logo, colors, court design, and merchandise. The color scheme was teal, purple, and black, leaning into the cartoon-style branding trends of the 1990s. The entire concept made it all the way to the NBA Board of Governors for a formal vote. The result came back 26-1 in favor of approving the name change. Nearly every franchise in the league said yes, except the Nets themselves cast the one no vote. Ownership rotated voting responsibilities among partners, and on that specific day, co-owner David Gerstein voted against it at the last moment. Because the team itself rejected the change, it couldn't pass league rules. Commissioner David Stern was reportedly furious when he heard the result. The entire rebrand collapsed, despite having overwhelming support from the rest of the league. The Nets stayed the Nets and eventually relocated to Brooklyn years later. The Swamp Dragons never existed, which honestly makes the story even better. James Naismith. James Naismith invented basketball in 1891. He later became the very first head coach in University of Kansas basketball history, taking the position in 1898. He coached for 9 seasons through 1907 and finished with a career record of 55 wins and 60 losses. That's a losing record. He's the only head coach in Kansas history to finish below 500. Every single coach who came after him finished above it. Kansas eventually became one of the most successful college basketball programs ever, producing Hall of Fame coaches and players for over a century. Naismith's approach to coaching focused heavily on sportsmanship and fundamentals rather than recruiting systems or tactical development. At the time, basketball itself was still being shaped. Rules were evolving. Spacing concepts didn't exist the way they do now, and coaching as a profession hadn't been defined yet. Naismith later served as Kansas athletic director, and the program eventually named its arena Naismith Court inside Allen Fieldhouse. The man literally created the sport, handed it to the world, coached it at the college level for nearly a decade, and still finished with a losing record. That's one of the most unintentionally funny facts in the entire history of basketball. LeBron versus relatives. LeBron James entered the NBA in 2003, and his career has stretched so long that he's ended up facing multiple fathers and their sons in official NBA games. Gary Payton's playing career ended in 2007. Gary Payton II entered the league in 2016. LeBron played against both. Kenyon Martin played until 2015. Kenyon Martin Jr. entered the NBA in 2020. LeBron faced both timelines. Gary Trent played in the early 2000s. Gary Trent Jr. became an NBA player in 2018. Rick Brunson played in the late 90s and early 2000s. His son Jalen Brunson became a star in the 2020s. Glenn Robinson was an all-star in the 90s. Glenn Robinson III entered the league in 2014. Glenn Rice was a major scorer in the 90s. Glenn Rice Jr. played briefly in the 2010s. LeBron played against all of them. Then in 2024, he and Bronny James became the first father and son teammates in NBA history, according to ESPN. So not only did he face multiple generational pairs, he also became part of one himself. His career bridges eras in a way that's genuinely never happened before in this league. Wilt Globetrotters. Wilt Chamberlain played for the Harlem Globetrotters during the 1958 to 1959 season. He joined after leaving the University of Kansas early. At the time, NBA rules required players to wait until their college class graduated before entering the league, so Chamberlain couldn't go straight to the pros. The Globetrotters signed him for $50,000, which was an extraordinarily high salary for that era. He wasn't just performing at local arenas either. The Globetrotters took him on a global exhibition tour that included stops in the Soviet Union, where the team performed at Moscow's Lenin Central Stadium in front of major political figures, including Nikita Khrushchev. The Globetrotters were the most famous basketball exhibition team in the world at the time, combining real competition with trick basketball. Chamberlain participated in the trick plays, crowd entertainment routines, and standard competitive segments. One well-documented moment involved him lifting teammate Meadowlark Lemon and tossing him into the air during a performance. After entering the NBA in 1959, Chamberlain reportedly rejoined the Globetrotters during off-seasons. He later described his time with them as including some of the most pleasant days of his life. The Globetrotters retired his number 13. This entire chapter happened before his NBA debut, before his 100-point game, and before any of his championships. Muggsy story. Muggsy Bogues stood 5 feet 3 inches tall, making him one of the shortest players in NBA history. Former NBA player Greg Anthony once told teammate Larry Johnson that Bogues was physically stronger than people realized. Johnson responded by claiming Bogues could bench press 450 pounds. That wasn't presented as a joke. According to the account reported by Duke Basketball Report, it was stated seriously. On top of that, Bogues was reported to have a 44-inch vertical leap. He played center in high school despite his height and had an elite low center of gravity that made him almost impossible to push off balance. He was known throughout his 14 NBA seasons for his steals, his ball pressure, and his ability to disrupt players who stood nearly 2 feet taller than him. One specific reported anecdote described Bogues physically lifting and pinning a player listed at 6 feet 9 and 270 pounds during a practice setting. His longest tenure came with the Charlotte Hornets, and throughout his career, his physical profile remained something teammates and opponents consistently brought up. The bench press number might sound outrageous, but Bogues had a reputation for being pound for pound one of the strongest players in the entire league. For someone his size, that's a different kind of impressive. Emoni Bates prank. Emoni Bates was selected 49th overall in the 2023 NBA draft by the Cleveland Cavaliers. During the 2023 NBA Summer League, he reposted a stat graphic on his Instagram story that significantly inflated his numbers from a recent game. His actual stat line from that performance was 12 points, 8 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 block, and 5 for 12 shooting. The graphic he reposted showed something very different. Fans noticed the discrepancy almost immediately, and it spread across every platform. The moment turned into one of the more discussed Summer League incidents of 2023. For context, Bates did have genuinely strong moments that summer, including 19 points, 5 rebounds, and 4 assists in a championship game covered by Sports Illustrated. He wasn't struggling through Summer League. He was actually performing well. But sharing a fake stat line publicly, regardless of how it happened, became the story that followed him into the start of his career. He entered the league as a former top-ranked high school prospect who had been called a potential steal of the draft heading into that summer. The viral moment became one of the clearest examples of how quickly social media turns a minor mistake into a talking point when you're a young player with a high profile and a following, watching your every move. Grizzlies' decision. The Vancouver Grizzlies relocated to Memphis in 2001. The franchise had been financially unsustainable in Vancouver for years. Team officials reported losses of approximately $40 million per year. Their overall record in Vancouver was 101 wins and 359 losses across 6 seasons, and they never once made the playoffs. The Canadian dollar was significantly weaker than the US dollar during that period, which reduced revenue every time money was converted. Some American players were also reportedly reluctant to play in Canada, and corporate sponsorship support in Vancouver was limited. Multiple cities competed to bring the franchise in. Memphis offered a fully built proposal. AutoZone founder Pitt Hyde committed to buying a stake. An existing arena called the Pyramid Arena was ready immediately, and a new arena plan was already being developed. Local businesses guaranteed ticket and suite purchases to strengthen the bid. FedEx played a major role in Memphis positioning itself as the top candidate. The company is headquartered in Memphis and deeply embedded in the city's identity. There was, reportedly, even a proposal to rename the team the Memphis Express. FedEx offered financial backing tied to branding, and the eventual arena became FedEx Forum. The NBA approved the relocation unanimously. The franchise became the Memphis Grizzlies, starting in the 2001 to 2002 season, and eventually became one of the most respected mid-market organizations in the league. Bynum's shot. In March 2012, with the Los Angeles Lakers leading and over 10 minutes remaining in the third quarter against the Golden State Warriors, 7-foot All-Star center Andrew Bynum attempted a three-pointer early in the shot clock. Head coach Mike Brown pulled him from the game immediately. Bynum played only about 3 minutes the rest of the game, according to Sports Illustrated. Brown said publicly that the shot could have disrupted the team's rhythm. Bynum pushed back, stating he had made a 3 recently before that game and would continue taking them. At the time, centers attempting threes was extremely rare and completely outside the structure of the Lakers' offense, which was built around post play and interior scoring. The team fined him shortly after. That season was also marked by additional behavioral issues, including Bynum skipping team huddles and meetings. Despite all of it, he was statistically having the best season of his career. It made the whole situation more frustrating from an organizational standpoint because the talent was clearly there. The incident became one of the most talked about instant benchings in NBA history, not because it was the most dramatic moment of that year, but because a coach benched his best big man for shooting from 3 with 10 minutes left in the third quarter of a game. They were winning. The timing and the reaction made it unforgettable. Sumo Rui Hachimura, was born and raised in Japan and developed his game through Japanese basketball systems before becoming the 14th overall pick in the 2019 NBA draft. During an NBA offseason, he returned to Japan and trained directly with professional sumo wrestlers inside a traditional sumo stable environment. The sessions weren't about lifting heavier weights or running sprints. They focused on leverage, balance, core strength, and staying grounded under contact. Sumo training emphasizes controlling positioning and driving forward with full body engagement, which translates directly to post-play, boxing out, and absorbing contact without losing footing. Hachimura worked on low center of gravity drills and forward driving contact sequences. Photos and video confirmed he was actively participating in sumo-style collision work, not just observing. Reports confirmed by Sports Illustrated placed him inside that training environment as part of a deliberate off-season development plan. The focus was body control and physical stability under NBA-level contact rather than raw strength alone. This type of cross-discipline training has become part of a broader modern NBA trend, where players use wrestling, martial arts, yoga, and other non-basketball methods to develop physical skills. Hachimura's version of it was unique because of his direct connection to Japanese culture and the specific demands of sumo. It highlighted exactly how seriously he approached the physical side of the game and how he uses his background as an actual competitive advantage. Kings versus Sixers. On November 30th, 2016, the Philadelphia 76ers and Sacramento Kings were scheduled to tip off at 7 o'clock in the evening at Wells Fargo Center. The game was officially postponed at 8:03 in the evening. The reason was condensation on the court, creating unsafe playing conditions. The cause was a combination of the NHL Philadelphia Flyers ice rink, located directly beneath the basketball floor, and unseasonably warm, humid weather in Philadelphia that day. The arena temperature hadn't been properly adjusted beforehand. Kings players had already noticed issues during morning shoot-around, and the problem escalated throughout the day. During warm-ups, players tested the surface and found multiple wet spots across the hardwood. Arena staff repeatedly attempted to dry the floor. Players and referees both deemed it unsafe to play. DeMarcus Cousins was spotted on the floor personally helping to dry the surface. Fans waited nearly an hour inside the arena, while mixed announcements created confusion before the official cancellation was made. This marked one of the rare NBA games postponed due to actual court conditions rather than external circumstances. And the Sixers had a separate incident in September 2018 when their annual blue-white preseason scrimmage at the Palestra, one of the most historic arenas in basketball, was also canceled due to moisture and condensation on the hardwood. The same franchise, two different arenas, same exact problem, 2 years apart. N.F.L. Riley. In 1967, Pat Riley was selected 7th overall in the NBA draft by the San Diego Rockets. That same year, he was also selected by the Dallas Cowboys in the 11th round of the NFL draft as a wide receiver. Here's the part that makes it even more unusual. Riley had not played college football. He was a multi-sport draft pick without any collegiate football experience attached to it. He chose basketball. He played 9 NBA seasons and won the 1972 NBA championship with the Los Angeles Lakers as a player. What came after that is well documented. He became a head coach, then an executive, and accumulated 9 NBA championships total across his various roles in the league. All of that started with the decision between 2 professional sports leagues in the same year. The Cowboys thought enough of his athleticism to draft him in the 11th round without any college football on his record. Riley looked at both options and picked the NBA. Given how his career turned out, both as a player and as one of the most successful coaches and executives in league history, it's not a hard decision to evaluate in hindsight. But at the time, in 1967, it was a genuine choice between 2 professional sports that ended up defining the next several decades of his life. Knicks versus Magic. On April 11th, 2015, the New York Knicks defeated the Orlando Magic 80-79. That sentence alone sounds unremarkable, but the second quarter of that game set the lowest scoring quarter in NBA history. The Knicks scored 8 points in that quarter. The Magic scored 7. Combined, that's 15 total points across an entire 12-minute period of professional basketball. The previous record had been 18 combined points, a mark that had been set multiple times before 2015. Orlando's 7 points in that quarter tied their own franchise low for any single quarter. The Knicks shot 3 for 20 in the period. The Magic shot 3 for 19 with 7 turnovers. The field goal efficiency from both sides was historically poor. Both teams were near the bottom of their respective standings and had been struggling offensively throughout the entire season. The Knicks won despite shooting 37% overall for the game. Cole Aldrich was their standout performer with 19 points and 14 rebounds. The quarter featured almost no scoring, heavy defensive stops, and shot after shot that didn't go in. It remains the lowest combined scoring quarter ever recorded in NBA history, and it happened in a game that also featured a 1-point final margin. The entire game was a mess, but that second quarter was something that will probably never be matched. Madsen versus Shaq. Mark Madsen played for the Los Angeles Lakers from 2000 to 2003 and was known as one of the most physically aggressive role players on those championship rosters. Shaq was the centerpiece of the team, a dominant center considered by many to be the most physically imposing player in the league at that time. Lakers practices during that era were described by multiple teammates as more intense than actual games. Phil Jackson used physical practices deliberately as part of building toughness for the playoffs. Madsen's job in practice was to guard Shaq, simulate playoff defense, and push back against one of the strongest players in NBA history. During one practice session, the physical battles between Madsen and Shaq escalated into a full fight. Teammates had to step in and physically separate them. The altercation came directly out of the repeated post battle that were part of every practice. Madsen fouled hard, used full strength, and didn't back down, which eventually led to the situation escalating. The coaching staff allowed it because that level of physicality was intentional. Madsen earned real respect from teammates for standing his ground against a player with an overwhelming size and strength advantage. The moment became part of Lakers practice lore from those championship years. It reflected exactly how competitive that locker room was even before they stepped onto a court for a real game. Huge lineup. During the 2020 Orlando bubble scrimmages, the Denver Nuggets deployed one of the most unusual lineups ever put on an NBA court. The group included Nikola Jokic, Mason Plumlee, Bol, Jeremy Grant, and Paul Millsap, with Jokic officially positioned as the point guard. Jokic is listed at 6'11" and approximately 284 pounds. Despite that size, he brought the ball up the court, called plays, directed spacing, and controlled tempo from the top of the key like a traditional one. He ran pick and roll as the ball handler, not the screener. He threw full court outlet passes directly after rebounds and operated in handoff actions identical to guard play. Statistically, the role was documented well before this lineup ever happened. Jokic averaged double-digit assists in multiple seasons, led the entire NBA in assists as a center, and became the all-time assists leader at his position. The lineup itself worked because everyone in it had enough size to create mismatches across all 5 positions. Simultaneously, Bol played like a wing. Despite being over 7 feet, Grant and Millsap could guard multiple positions. Plumlee contributed as a secondary passing big. Traditional opponents couldn't hide weak defenders or use standard assignments because Jokic was operating as the initiator from the perimeter with 4 other oversized players around him. It's one of the clearest examples of positionless basketball ever attempted at the NBA level. Gervin versus Pekola. George Gervin played college basketball at Eastern Michigan University. During his college career, he was involved in an on-court incident during a game against Roanoke College in which he punched opposing player Jay Pekola. The punch happened during live game action and resulted in Gervin being removed from the program. It altered his college path significantly. He eventually continued his career outside of Eastern Michigan, moved through the American Basketball Association, and then entered the NBA, where he became a Hall of Fame player and a 4-time scoring champion. Jay Pekola, the player on the other side of that incident, followed a completely different path. After his playing days, he transitioned into the business world and eventually joined Puma. He rose through the company over time and became president of Puma North America, a position he held for approximately 2 decades. One punch during a college basketball game connected 2 careers that couldn't have ended up more differently. One man became one of the most prolific scorers in professional basketball history. The other became one of the most prominent executives in global sports apparel. The fact that their careers both started from the same moment on the same court and went in completely opposite directions is genuinely one of the more bizarre coincidences in sports history. NBA Centel, it started off as a parody account, but not the kind with over-the-top memes or bad jokes. NBA Centel actually looked real. The font, the tone, the phrasing, it was all copy-pasted straight from legit news accounts. The only giveaway? That tiny letter swap from Central to Centel. Casual fans missed it. A lot of professionals missed it too. The whole thing kicked off in July 2022 when some anonymous genius up in Toronto decided to make an account that walked the line between hilarious and believable. At first, it even posted normal basketball content just to bait the hook. Then came the fake quotes, absurd headlines, and wild claims, dressed up to look like breaking news. And it worked. By early 2025, Centel had racked up over 300,000 followers. Players fell for it. Draymond Green clapped back at a quote that never existed. Kevin Garnett jumped in too. Colin Cowherd read one on air like it was breaking news. At this point, getting Centelled became its own thing. Even Merriam-Webster chimed in. Then, out of nowhere, the account vanished. On February 26, Centel's posts just stopped showing up. Users freaked out. Teams like the Rockets and Heat dropped free Centel posts. Fans filled the timeline with fake eulogies. But 24 hours later, Centel came back. No explanation, just vibes. Posts resumed like nothing had happened. No apology, no message. Just chaos returned to normal. Now it's permanently burned into NBA culture. Not just a fake news account, a social experiment in disguise. Todd McCulloch's foot neuropathy and pinball career. Todd McCulloch had the height, skill, and stats to stick in the league, but his feet had other plans. He played for the Philadelphia 76ers and New Jersey Nets, quietly stacking points, rebounds, and blocks over 4 seasons. Then came the diagnosis: Charcot-Marie-Tooth disease. That's a genetic disorder affecting the peripheral nerves, especially in the feet. He had pain, numbness, weird sensations like his socks were always bunched up. Doctors told him the nerve damage was too severe to continue. At 28, he called it a career and stepped away in 2004. But his competitive drive didn't shut down. It just shifted from basketball courts to blinking pinball machines. He'd already been playing casually, and after retirement, things got serious. He bought machines, built a collection, and started showing up to tournaments. Not small ones either. He played in IFPE and PAPA events, including the World Championships. He won the Pinball Expo Flip-Out in Chicago in 2011, beating top-ranked players and taking home a few $1,000s. By 2025, he was still active. First-place finishes in weekly Stern Army events, solid placements in regionals like Bainbridge and Northwest Pinball, and even hosting events at his own home. His world ranking moved over time, sometimes in the top 200, sometimes closer to 129. Despite being 7 feet tall, he often plays seated to manage the pain. No height advantage when you're hunched over a pinball machine. His story's rare. One of the only players to go from NBA hardwood to the flashing lights of competitive pinball. The focus, hand-eye coordination, and pressure, turns out those skills translate better than you'd think. Donovan Mitchell versus Ben Simmons. Rookie debate. During the 2017 to 2018 season, 2 players stood out. Donovan Mitchell, a first-year guard for the Utah Jazz, had an explosive season right out of the gate. He'd been drafted in 2017 and immediately suited up, becoming one of the top young scorers in the league. Then there was Ben Simmons. He was drafted back in 2016, but missed the entire season with a foot injury. So despite being in the league a year longer, the 2017 to 2018 campaign was his first time actually playing, making him technically eligible as a rookie. That technicality became the center of a huge debate. Simmons confidently said he should win Rookie of the Year. He even claimed no other rookies had impressed him. Jazz fans and others pushed back, saying he'd already had a full year to adapt to the league behind the scenes. Mitchell leaned into it. He showed up before a game in April wearing a hoodie with a dictionary definition of the word rookie on it. The message was crystal clear, and the whole league noticed. The hoodie, reportedly made with help from Adidas, wasn't subtle. Simmons shrugged it off, saying it was all love, but he also threw shade, saying if that was Mitchell's only argument, he liked his chances. The moment became a mini pop culture saga. Even dictionary accounts online joined in. In the end, Simmons won Rookie of the Year. Mitchell still made all-rookie first team. But the hoodie, the quote, and the back and forth, that's what made this one of the strangest Rookie of the Year showdowns in recent memory. By the way, if you guys want to subscribe, I'm going to be posting every day. Thanks. Anyways, Master P's NBA dream. Percy Miller was already a music mogul when he decided basketball wasn't finished with him. Before the fame, he'd played college ball at Houston, then Merritt College, but injuries and school issues pushed him toward music. By the late 1990s, he'd conquered that world and circled back to hoops. In 1998, he joined the Fort Wayne Fury in the CBA as a backup guard. The opportunity came from a tryout request, not hype. Coaches called him coachable and committed, but not NBA ready. That didn't stop him. In January 1999, he landed a short training camp deal with the Charlotte Hornets. He stayed about 10 days, played limited preseason minutes, scored 7 points, and was released before the regular season. Later that year, he caught on with the Toronto Raptors for camp. In a preseason game, he scored 8 points. Again, he was released before the season tipped off. No official NBA games ever followed, just exhibitions and camps. He kept chasing runs elsewhere. In late 1999, he signed with the San Diego Stingrays in the International Basketball League. The stint didn't last long. In 2004, he played in the ABA with Las Vegas and Long Beach. Even after that, basketball stayed close. In 2008, he dropped 17 points in the NBA All-Star Celebrity Game. Later, he shifted to development, running an AAU program that won multiple national titles and coached future NBA players. In February 2025, he took over basketball operations at the University of New Orleans to guide the program. Wemby's Shaolin Temple Training. In the summer of 2025, Wemby didn't just rest or rehab. He flew to Zhengzhou, China, and checked into a Shaolin temple. Yes, a literal monastery. The stay lasted about 10 days and was confirmed by the NBA's China office. Wemby said the goal was to push his body into unfamiliar territory. Instead of weights or cardio drills, he was out there doing kung fu routines, stretching like a monk and meditating with Buddhist practitioners. Every day was packed with new kinds of motion, deep breathing, and physical stress his body wasn't used to. He even shaved his head and wore the robes. Real monk stuff. Photos surfaced online showing him in the full look, bald, robed, and blending in with the other temple students. Social media ran wild with it. People called him Zen Banyema. The food situation was a challenge. Meals were vegetarian. Zucchini, rice noodles, monk portion. He eventually admitted he had to sneak out for meat to keep his calorie count up. The whole thing came after his season ended early due to a blood clot in his shoulder. So, instead of just hitting the gym, he took a mental and physical detour to rebuild in a way few athletes even consider. It wasn't for show either. Fans at the temple posted pictures. Journalists confirmed the visit. Wemby later told media the experience was hard but valuable. He said it forced him to use muscles in new ways and trained his mind to focus differently. While most players were hitting private trainers or running beach sprints, Wemby was kicking, meditating, and eating rice under temple bells. Because of course he was. Zhang Ziyu's rise, born May 2, 2007, in Jinan, Shandong, Zhang Ziyu is already rewriting the record books. Standing 7 feet 3 inches tall, she's one of the tallest female basketball players ever. And it shows. Her parents both played the game, with her mother a former national team center. From a young age, Zhang was surrounded by the sport and developed inside elite programs in China. Her youth dominance hit global headlines at the 2024 FIBA U18 Women's Asia Cup. She averaged 35 points, nearly 13 rebounds, and was named tournament MVP. She torched Japan for 44 points, added 42 in the final, and left the event as the top scorer and rebound. It wasn't a fluke. She had already dropped 68 points in a provincial championship before that. In July 2025, she debuted for the senior national team at the Women's Asia Cup. Her first game, 13 points in 12 minutes. She averaged over 15 points for the tournament and put up 18 in the third place game against South Korea. Just a few months later, she signed with Shandong Six Stars and debuted in the WCBA, scoring 15 in limited minutes. Zhang's length gives her an automatic edge near the rim, but it's the efficiency and touch that set her apart. In youth play, she converted at a high clip, blocked shots, controlled the glass. She even played in the WCBA All-Star game before her official league debut. With eligibility for the WNBA draft in 2027, scouts are already watching. Zhang isn't just tall, she's productive, polished, and rising fast. Her journey from youth prodigy to professional force is happening in real time. Charles Barkley's absence from NBA 2K. Charles Barkley isn't missing from NBA 2K by accident. He's made it clear for years that he doesn't want to be included unless some serious changes happen. The reason? He believes the game's profits should benefit retired players who helped build the league but didn't make the money stars do today. He's been vocal since at least 2016. His stance hasn't changed. Barkley says NBA 2K pulls in hundreds of millions each year, yet very little of that goes to the older guys who didn't earn big contracts. He's asked the company to contribute about $1 million annually, not to him, but to help retired players through the National Basketball Retired Players Association. He said plainly, if 2K makes that donation, they can use his name, likeness, stats, all of it. Until then, he's out. That's why you won't see him on the all-time Suns or Sixers. He's not alone either. Reggie Miller and others have also held out due to similar compensation disagreements. NBA 2K does have active players through deals with the Players Association. Retired players, though, need separate agreements. In Barkley's case, the publisher hasn't agreed to his terms, so it's not a legal issue, it's a personal one, based on principle. Other legends took the deal. Barkley didn't. He's not asking for cash. He's asking for fairness. He thinks the game's legacy content should give back to the very people who made the league what it is. That's why after all these years, one of the biggest stars in NBA history still isn't in. Phil Jackson nearly brought Pippen to the Lakers. When Phil Jackson took over the Lakers in 1999, one of his first major ideas was reuniting with Scottie Pippen. The two had just dominated the decade in Chicago, and Jackson saw Pippen as a perfect third piece, alongside Shaq and Kobe Bryant. But the move didn't happen, and the reason was money. Pippen was under contract with the Houston Rockets, locked into a 5-year deal worth about $67 million. That meant a salary of over $11 million per season. Lakers owner Jerry Buss shut the idea down fast. Buss made it clear that bringing in Pippen under that contract would strangle the team's ability to make future moves. With major cap hits already tied to Shaq and Kobe, adding another long-term, expensive deal would leave no flexibility. He publicly said that signing Pippen would make it impossible to ever improve this team. There were rumors that trade talks got started. Some suggested names like Glenn Rice or Robert Horry were floated as part of a potential deal, but those talks never went anywhere. The Rockets weren't eager to trade, and the Lakers weren't willing to absorb that contract, so the plan died. Pippen never came to LA. He ended up with Portland later that same year. Meanwhile, the Lakers kept their core intact. Jackson worked with what he had, and it worked. They won 3 straight titles from 2000 through 2002. Looking back, the story shows how close LA came to having a Jordan-era reunion team. But cap math won. Buss chose long-term flexibility over nostalgia, and the Lakers got a dynasty without adding one of the greatest wings of all time. Shaq buys 3 Rolls Royces. This one's simple. Shaq got insulted, and he responded with a 7-figure shopping spree. According to Shaq himself, it all started when he walked into a Rolls-Royce dealership, just looking around. He asked a few questions about the cars, and one of the salesmen looked him up and down and asked the magic words, "Can you afford these?" Shaq didn't argue. He didn't explain. He pointed to 3 different Rolls Royces and said, that one, and that one. He paid for all 3 on the spot. The total? About $1.3 million. Just like that. 3 luxury cars. One very fast flex. He told the story on the Drink Champs podcast, laughing about it, but also making it clear. It wasn't really about cars. It was about pride. He wanted to prove a point. And the fastest way to do that was to spend like only Shaq can. What's even better? He barely drives them. By his own admission, those Rolls Royces mostly sit untouched. The moment wasn't about cruising around in style. It was about shutting someone down with his wallet. This fits right into the pattern. Shaq's shared other stories about wild spending, especially earlier in his career. Multi-$1,000 shopping trips, big purchases without a second thought. It's part of the legend. The internet had its fun with the story, of course. Some called it iconic. Others called it ridiculous. But for Shaq, it wasn't about practicality. It was about being underestimated for 5 seconds and turning that into $1 million message. The NBA's first game and the tall fan promotion. On November 1st, 1946, the Basketball Association of America held its very first game, the league that would later become the NBA. It happened at Maple Leaf Gardens in Toronto, and the matchup was between the Toronto Huskies and the New York Knickerbockers. But the game itself wasn't the only thing grabbing attention. To pull fans into the building, the Huskies ran a very specific and hilarious promotion. If you were taller than their tallest player, George Nostrand, you got in free. Nostrand stood 6 feet, 8 inches, which at the time was enormous. The rule was simple. Taller than Nostrand, no ticket required. It was promoted in newspapers across Toronto the day before the game. Nostrand played forward and center for the Huskies, and that night he scored 16 points, but no reports ever confirmed that anyone actually met the height requirement for free admission. So, the gimmick did its job in marketing, not in giveaways. Regular tickets ranged from 75 cents to $2.50. Still, the promotion drew a crowd of over 7,000 fans, a strong turnout for a league nobody really knew yet. The Knicks ended up winning the game 68-66. Ossie Schekman scored the league's first basket, and Toronto's Ed Sadowski led all scorers with 18. The Huskies didn't survive beyond that season, but the promotion did. It lives on as one of the weirdest early attempts to make pro basketball exciting to the public. And in a league that now features global stars, that first quirky night with a height-based ticket offer still stands tall in NBA lore. Michael Beasley's draft party standoff with LeBron. In 2008, Michael Beasley had just been drafted 2nd overall by the Miami Heat. He was 19, fresh off a dominant season at Kansas State, and throwing a party to celebrate his arrival in the league. That's when LeBron James walked in. At that point, LeBron had already played 5 seasons, was a perennial all-star, and one of the most famous athletes on the planet. Beasley, meanwhile, was still riding that confident rookie energy. So when LeBron approached him at the party and leaned in with one question, "Are you ready?" Most people might have nodded, said yes, maybe kept it humble. Beasley didn't. He looked right at him and fired back with the same exact words. "Are you ready?" No explanation, no smile, just that. According to Beasley, LeBron looked him up and down and walked away without another word. That tiny moments become a classic NBA story, not because anything wild happened, but because it showed how Beasley came into the league with no fear. He wasn't about to flinch, not even when LeBron was checking his pulse. Years later, the story still gets shared on social media. It's short, funny, and memorable. Two guys, two identical questions, and a walk-off. Beasley never backed down, even before playing a single NBA game. It's one of those weird human stories that fans love. A rookie trying to match energy with the king of the league. And even though the moment lasted seconds, it's still one of the most talked about introductions from that draft class. Michael Jordan's last playoff loss. After retiring in October 1993, Michael Jordan stepped away from basketball and joined the Chicago White Sox organization to play minor league baseball. He spent the 1994 season with the Birmingham Barons, hitting around .202 with 51 RBIs. But in March 1995, Jordan stunned the sports world by returning to the NBA with iconic words, "I'm back." He rejoined the Chicago Bulls late in the 1994-95 season and played in just 17 regular season games. Despite the short runway, the Bulls went 13-4 with Jordan in the lineup, closing strong into the playoffs. In the postseason, Chicago entered as the 5th seed in the East and advanced to face the top-seeded Orlando Magic in the Eastern Conference semifinals. The Magic were led by Shaq and a young Penny Hardaway, and the Bulls, still adjusting to Jordan's return, had to navigate a tough matchup. The series stretched 6 games. Orlando took it 4-2, ending with a 108-102 win on May 18, 1995. That series marked the last time Jordan ever lost a playoff series with the Bulls. Jordan still delivered in the stat sheet, averaging 31 points, 6.5 rebounds, and nearly 4 assists per game during the series, but it wasn't enough. Team around him wasn't yet in championship form, and Orlando capitalized. The very next season, the Bulls came back with a vengeance. They swept the Magic in the conference finals and won the title. But that spring in 1995, that was the final playoff series anyone ever beat Michael Jordan in, Stephen Jackson's wild road to the NBA. Stephen Jackson didn't get drafted because of a college highlight reel or NCAA tournament run. He didn't even play a minute of college ball. He was supposed to suit up for Arizona after a dominant high school career and a spot in the 1996 McDonald's All-American game. But his SAT and ACT scores weren't high enough to qualify, and the NCAA ruled him ineligible. He enrolled at Butler County Community College in Kansas. That lasted 1 semester, and he never played there either. No college tape, no tournament exposure, just raw talent and a reputation that hadn't faded. In 1997, Virginia Bibby, Mike Bibby's mom, and a family friend brought Jackson to the Phoenix Suns facility. He wasn't invited by the front office. He was just there. But once he hit the court in pickup games, he made it count. Going right at Cedric Ceballos, a veteran forward at the time, Jackson made enough noise to grab the attention of everyone watching. Danny Ainge, then running the Suns, saw it. And when the 1997 draft came around, Phoenix used the 42nd pick on Jackson. No college resume, just a few intense pickup sessions. It didn't stick right away. He was cut before the season even started. From there, Jackson went through the CBA, overseas leagues, and a long road back to the NBA. But the path, completely unorthodox. A draft pick earned on raw attitude, fearless play, and a couple days in a gym. No scholarship games, no coach endorsements. Just a guy hooping his way into the league by refusing to be ignored. Lauri's military service. In Finland, every male citizen must serve in the military before turning 30. No exceptions, not even for NBA All-Stars. So when Utah Jazz forward Lauri finished his NBA season in 2023, he packed up and reported for duty on April 17th. He trained at the Finnish Defense Forces Sports School, based at the Santa Hamina Garrison in Helsinki. It's a military installation on a coastal island, and it's where elite athletes can fulfill service requirements while continuing some level of training. Lauri, like every other conscript, got the standard military haircut and went through basic exercises. His daily life was far from glamorous. He learned how to build fires, pitch tents, and survive outdoors. He received weapons training and slept in field conditions. Despite growing up in Finland, he admitted that waking up freezing in a tent was still a rude surprise. Throughout the experience, Lauri worked alongside other conscripts, many younger than him, some fellow. Athletes, completing physical drills and team-based exercises meant to teach discipline, resilience, and cohesion. He finished his service on September 29th, just in time for NBA training camp. Lauri described the experience as mentally and physically challenged, calling it something that pushed him far outside his comfort zone. He said it helped him grow as a leader, not in a locker room, but in real-world situations where teamwork actually meant survival. Despite his fame, he didn't receive any special treatment. He showed up, did the work, and completed his service like everyone else. For Finland, it was a proud example, a national star respecting civic duty. For Laurie, it was another test of toughness, and one he passed. Seattle King, the Maloof family had run the Sacramento Kings straight into a financial ditch, and by the time 2013 rolled around, they were desperately looking for a way out. So they cut a massive deal, over $525 million, to sell the team to a Seattle-based group led by Chris Hansen, backed by none other than Steve Ballmer. The plan? Move the Kings to Seattle and bring back the Supersonics. It sounded clean and final, and on February 6th, relocation paperwork was filed with the league. But Sacramento wasn't going down easy. The city pulled out every stop, with then-Mayor Kevin Johnson leading a local ownership push and pitching a flashy new downtown arena. Things got tense. Then, on April 29th, the NBA's relocation committee slammed the brakes. They voted 7-0 against the move. That sent a clear signal. The league wasn't having it. The death blow came on May 15th, when the NBA Board of Governors held the official vote, 22-8. Deal dead. That was it. Sacramento got to keep its team. The Maloofs sold the Kings to a new local group led by Vivek Ranadive, and soon after, plans for what would become the Golden One Center kicked off. Seattle had the money, the market, and a motivated ownership group, but none of it mattered. The league's decision made it crystal clear. Franchise movement isn't just about cash or fan bases. It's about approval from the top. And this time, the door stayed shut. Oldest rookie ever. Pablo Prigioni went undrafted in 1999, and that should have been the end of the NBA dream. Instead, it was just the beginning of one of the strangest roads to the league ever taken. He started in Argentina, bouncing between teams like Ramallo and Obras Sanitarias, before heading to Spain in 1999 to join Fuenlabrada. Over the next 12 years, he became a staple in European basketball at Lucentum Alicante, Baskonia, and Real Madrid. He racked up league titles, domestic cups, and a reputation as one of Europe's smartest point guard. Not flashy, but ridiculously efficient. When the New York Knicks signed him in July of 2012, it barely made a blip. Then, on November 2nd, he hit the court at 35 years and 169 days old, the oldest rookie in modern NBA history. That season, he wasn't just some novelty. He started games, ran the offense, and helped the Knicks reach the second round, their deepest playoff run in over 10 years. He wasn't there to dunk or break ankle. He just ran the game like a coach in sneakers. After 3 years with New York, he landed in Houston for a stretch, then moved to the Clippers in 2015. Nothing wild, but still sharp, always thinking 2 steps ahead. Across 4 seasons and nearly 270 games, he averaged about 3.5 points, nearly 2 rebounds, and almost 3 assists per game. Then he made the move to coaching, joining the Timberwolves staff and bringing decades of experience with him. From undrafted to historic rookie to respected coach, Prigioni's path might be one of the NBA's most underrated journeys. Knicks point guard, carousel. From 2009 through 2021, the New York Knicks somehow started a different point guard on opening night every single season. That's 13 straight years of musical chairs at one position. It started with Chris Duhon in 2009, then came Raymond Felton in 2010, followed by Tony Douglas, and then Felton again in 2012. That made him the only player to double dip in that era. After that, it was Pablo Prigioni, then Shane Larkin. Jose Calderon got the nod in 2015, Jerry and Grant in 2016, and then things got even messier. There were years with guys like Ramon Sessions, then Trey Burke. Alonzo Trier started in 2019, then Elfrid Payton in 2020, and finally, Kemba Walker in 2021. This revolving door of opening night starters wasn't just a weird coincidence. It showed just how unstable the Knicks were at point guard for over a decade. 13 seasons, 13 different names. Then came Jalen Brunson. When he started in 2022, it was business as usual, a new name. But when he started again in 2023, it snapped the streak. For the first time since 2009, the Knicks had a point guard start back-to-back season openers. Brunson didn't just break the streak, he brought stability. He became the face of the offense and a real foundational piece. After over a decade of inconsistency, the Knicks finally found someone they could stick with. That bizarre 13-year run, officially over. Rockets, Butler offer. Back in October of 2018, the Houston Rockets made a wild swing to land Jimmy Butler. He'd already asked out of Minnesota, and the Rockets were trying to wedge him right between James Harden and Chris Paul. Their pitch? 4 future first-round draft picks. All of them. The maximum number allowed under league rules. The deal also likely included salary pieces like Brandon Knight and Marquise Chris, just to make the math work, but the heart of it was the picks. It was a rare kind of desperation, betting everything on a star who could walk in free agency that summer. Under NBA rules, you can't send out first-rounders in back-to-back years, and they all have to fall within a 7-year window. That means the picks would have been spaced out, probably every other year, to comply with the Stepien rule. But Minnesota didn't go for it. They wanted actual players, not a distant pile of maybes. Instead of sending Butler to Houston, they dealt him to the Sixers for Robert Covington, Dario Saric, Jerry Bayless, and a second-round pick in 2022. At the time, people thought 4 picks was jaw-dropping. Since then, trades for guys like Kevin Durant and Rudy Gobert have redefined the price tag. But in 2018, Houston's offer stood out as one of the most aggressive of the era. If Minnesota had taken it, the entire Western Conference could have shifted. Instead, the Rockets stayed the course, and Butler took his drama to the East, one of those what-could-have-beens that never gets less interesting. Spurs, win record. Among all NBA players who've suited up for at least 1,000 games, only 3 finished with win percentages over 70%, and every single one of them played for the San Antonio Spurs. Manu led the pack at roughly 72.1%. Tim Duncan followed close behind at about 71.9%, and Tony Parker rounded it out near 71.1%. No one else with that kind of career longevity has matched those numbers. That stat's not just impressive, it's ridiculous. Sustaining that kind of win rate for over 1,000 games, that takes more than talent. It takes a whole franchise built to win year after year, and that's exactly what the Spurs gave them. From the late 90s through the early 2010s, San Antonio was the model of stability. That trio helped grab 4 championships together in 2003, 2005, 2007, and 2014. The system stayed consistent. The roster had continuity, and Greg Popovich was at the center of it all. Pop coached all 3 for basically their entire careers. Under him, the Spurs pulled off 22 straight winning seasons and were always in the playoff mix. That machine-like consistency propped up their stats. They rarely had to survive losing seasons or rebuilds. In today's NBA, with constant roster changes and wild parity, keeping a win rate above 70% across more than 1,000 games feels impossible. The fact that 3 players did it, and they were all Spurs, says everything about the dynasty's design. It wasn't just good players, it was a complete blueprint for winning, and those 3 executed it better than anyone. Center 6th, men, for 34 straight years. No, center won the NBA 6th Man of the Year award. The drought started after Bill Walton grabbed it in 1986 and didn't end until Montrezl Harrell claimed it in 2020. That's it, just those 2. In league history, they're the only traditional big men to ever win the award. Walton's win came as he backed up Robert Parrish for the Boston Celtics. He didn't need big minutes to make a difference. He brought passing, defense, rebounding, and just flat-out smarts. He was the perfect glue guy on one of the greatest teams ever. Then came a 34-year stretch where 6th man went to just about anyone except centers. Guards and wings took over, mostly guys who came off the bench to get buckets. Pure scoring flash. Big men, they got screens and rebounds, not trophies. Harrell finally broke that trend with the Clippers. He played as a forward-center hybrid, but in function, he was their main interior presence off the bench. He put up nearly 19 points and over 7 rebounds per game during the 2019-20 season. He brought insane energy and physicality, and he finished plays like a wrecking ball in sneakers. What makes this gap so wild is how rare it's been for centers to get that kind of recognition off the bench. 6th man has always skewed toward guards who score. Harrell and Walton were outliers. Both did it with impact, but in totally different eras and styles. 2 bigs, 34 years apart, and a trophy, usually reserved for shooters in headbands. Rodman's babysitter. Jack Haley wasn't on the court much, but his presence around Dennis Rodman made him one of the most talked about reserves in the league. He and Rodman became close friends during their time with the Spurs, and later reunited on the Bulls. Because of how often they were seen together, and how Haley always seemed to be nearby when Rodman's antics started brewing, people started calling him the babysitter. That label stuck, mostly thanks to media exaggeration and rival players tossing shade. It wasn't an official role. No team paperwork said monitor Rodman, but it was obvious Haley had a unique influence. He was someone Rodman actually listened to, which made him valuable in ways that didn't show up in the box score. Still, Haley hated the term. He pushed back hard, saying he made the roster as a player, not as a bodyguard or emotional handler. To him, it was a friendship, not a job. He didn't want to be reduced to a punchline just because his best friend happened to be one of the most unpredictable players in league history. But perception ran wild, especially when they were on that legendary 1995-96 Bulls team. Rodman was doing Rodman things, coloring his hair, getting tossed, causing chaos, and Haley was always around. That made the jokes easy. Even after his passing in 2015, people kept pointing out the babysitter angle, but deeper. Retrospectives made it clear Haley wasn't just along for the ride. He was a real teammate, a real friend, and probably one of the few people Rodman trusted during one of the NBA's most volatile runs. LeBron James. The 2011 finals wasn't just a loss, it became the measuring stick for every critique he'd face for the rest of his career. After teaming up with D. Wade and Chris Bosh, the expectations weren't just high, they were volcanic. But Dallas didn't care. They beat Miami 4-2, and LeBron's performance, way under his standard. He averaged under 18 points, barely over 7 rebounds, and just under 7 assists. Not awful, but nowhere near what people expected, especially with the spotlight burning. Game 4 was the tipping point. He played 46 minutes and scored only 8 points. That's the moment that's haunted him the most. Analysts tore into his fourth quarter performances, where he consistently disappeared. He wasn't aggressive, often settling for jumpers or passing out of mismatch. At times, he was being guarded by much smaller defenders and still wouldn't attack. Meanwhile, Dallas executed their scheme perfectly, shutting down the paint, switching everything and knocking down 3 after 3. In Game 5, he had a triple-double, but only 2 points in the fourth. Even LeBron admitted it. This was his lowest point. The pressure, the team construction, the Mavericks' defense, it all collided. But this wasn't a simple collapse. It was a complex, multi-layered failure that changed how he approached everything that followed. Chris Paul. The 2021 finals lit the fuse that blew up Phoenix's title shot. Up 2-0, the Suns looked like they had control. But this was the turning point, and Chris Paul's fingerprints were all over it. He had 10 points, 7 assists, but 5 turnovers. That's where everything started to unravel. Chris Paul's first time in the finals, his one chance to end the ringless conversation. The Suns shot over 51%. The Bucks barely cracked 40, but Phoenix turned it over 17 times. Milwaukee, only 5. That's a massive gap. Those turnovers handed the Bucks 24 points, while the Suns only scored 5 off theirs. Paul had 79 touches, the most on the team, and those late giveaways crushed momentum. One with just over 3 minutes left led to a Bucks bucket. Another with under 30 seconds gave Milwaukee the breathing room they needed. He admitted it too, said it was all on him. Head coach Monty Williams called them self-inflicted. It wasn't just one mistake, it was a pattern. Add in Giannis's game-saving block, Middleton's late surge, and a rough non-call on Devin Booker, and the Suns were toast. Milwaukee ended up with 19 more shot attempts. Phoenix shot better, but never had the ball enough. After this game, the series was tied. After that, it was gone. For Paul, it became yet another lead that slipped away. Steph Curry. The 2016 Finals meltdown still casts a shadow. Golden State had won 73 regular season games. They were defending champs. They had a 3-1 lead, and they blew it. Curry's numbers started strong. Game 4 saw him score 38 and hit 7 threes. But the next 3 games unraveled fast. In Game 6, he fouled out and got ejected after tossing his mouthguard into the crowd. That made him the first MVP to foul out in the finals since Shaq. Then came Game 7, 17 points on 6 for 19 shooting. That's the line. With under a minute left, Kyrie Irving hit a 3 over Curry. That gave Cleveland the lead. Golden State had the ball, and instead of calling timeout, they went for Curry to create. He got Kevin Love one-on-one, but Love clamped him. Curry missed the 3. That was it. His decision-making down the stretch drew heat, and his shooting was inconsistent all series. Some argue he was still recovering from earlier knee and ankle injury. That might explain the drop in aggression and movement. Still, critics point to his ejection, his inefficiency, and that last possession as symbols of the collapse. Curry's admitted it still bothers him. That Kyrie shot, that missed 3, the blown lead. Even now, it lingers. For a player with his resume, that finals loss remains a defining scar. By the way, if you guys want to subscribe, I'm going to be posting every day. Thanks. Anyways, Kevin Durant. Game 5 of the 2019 finals was supposed to be heroic. Instead, it ended with a torn Achilles and one of the most devastating injuries in modern basketball. Durant had missed multiple games that postseason, with a right calf strain. The Warriors were down 3-1, facing elimination. So he suited up, and for 11 minutes, he looked electric. 11 points, smooth shooting, dangerous spacing. Then it happened. Early second quarter, Durant tried to drive past Serge Ibaka. Mid-move, his right leg gave out. He crumpled, grabbing his lower leg. Teammates helped him off. The broadcast showed slow-mo of his calf twitching, clear to anyone what it torn. The Warriors pulled out a 1-point win that night, but the damage was done. Post-game, they confirmed the Achilles rupture. Durant's finals run was over. The Warriors pushed it to Game 6 but lost the series. Afterward, Bob Myers choked up, publicly shouldering blame. Fans and media argued about risk. Should he have played? Should the team have held him out? Durant later said he knew it was serious right away. He felt his foot hanging, said his whole career flashed through his mind. He had surgery, missed the next season, and left Golden State that summer. The injury changed everything. It was the end of the dynasty. It was Durant's last moment in that jersey, and it started a long road back from a tear that once ended careers. Giannis, the top-seeded Milwaukee Bucks, entered the 2023 playoffs with 58 wins and sky-high expectation. But against an 8th-seeded Miami team that came through the play-in, they crumbled fast. In Game 1, Giannis took a nasty fall and left early with a lower back contusion. That one injury shifted the entire series. He didn't play in Games 2 or 3, and Milwaukee dropped both. Missing their anchor during the heart of the series was brutal. When Giannis came back for Game 4, he posted a triple-double, but it still wasn't enough. The Heat kept the pressure up. Then came Game 5. Milwaukee had a lead. Giannis dropped 38 points and grabbed 20 boards. But 13 missed free throws? That hurt. In a tight overtime game, those chances mattered. Miami pulled off the win, 128-126. And just like that, Milwaukee was out. This was only the 6th time in league history that a top seed lost to an 8th seed. Giannis played through injury, and his numbers looked impressive. But the missed time, the free throw issues, and the team's late game collapse told the real story. The Bucks struggled without him, and even with him, they couldn't finish. James Harden. In the 2017 Western Conference semifinals, Game 6 against the Spurs turned into a complete meltdown for Houston, and Harden's performance was at the center of it. He played 37 minutes, took only 11 shots, and finished with just 10 points. That's shockingly low for a guy who usually dominates the ball. He went 2 for 11 from the field and missed 7 of his 9 3-point attempts. It was rough. His efficiency was way off. A true shooting percentage of just over 36%? That's not playoff caliber from a top scorer. And to make matters worse, he turned the ball over 6 times and fouled out with a little over 3 minutes left. By the time he was gone, the Rockets were already deep in a 39-point hole, and the Spurs were cruising. That one game ended the series 4-2 for San Antonio. The criticism came quick. Fans and analysts were asking what happened. Theories flew around. Maybe it was fatigue, maybe something else, but nothing was confirmed. What is clear? Harden looked passive. He wasn't aggressive, didn't push the pace, and didn't take control. This one's constantly mentioned in conversations about his playoff struggles. The offense collapsed, Harden disappeared, and a blowout loss at home sealed it. For a player with that much usage, that much skill, and that much on the line, this Game 6 still stands out. Derrick Rose. Just 1 year after becoming the youngest MVP in league history, his playoff return in 2012 came with massive expectations. Chicago had 50 wins and the top seed. But in Game 1 of the first round, with just over a minute left and a double-digit lead, Rose drove into the lane, jumped off a 2-foot plant, and everything changed. On landing, his left knee gave out. He hit the floor in obvious pain, and minutes later, the MRI confirmed it, a torn left ACL. That single moment ended his season and pulled the plug on the Bulls' title hopes. He had 23 points, 9 assists, and 9 boards before the injury. But after surgery in May, Rose didn't return at all the next year. Even when cleared by doctors, he sat out the entire 2013 season. Then, in the 2013 to 2014 season, just 10 games in, he tore his right meniscus. Medical experts pointed to previous ankle instability as a possible root. Weakened mechanics from past sprains might have placed more stress on the knee. After that ACL tear, Rose never quite regained that explosive burst. His effective shooting fell, his offensive rating dropped, and his physical style had to adapt. Defenders adjusted too, no longer fearing his first step. That one injury reshaped his game, his confidence, and his career path. It became one of the NBA's biggest what-if moments, with many still wondering how far he could have gone without it. DeMar. In 2018, Toronto had their best season ever, grabbing 59 wins and the top spot in the East. After getting through Washington, they ran straight into Cleveland again. The Cavaliers had swept them the year before, and this time, it was worse. The defining moment came in Game 3, with the series already slipping. DeMar struggled badly, just 8 points on 3 of 12 shooting and a minus 23 plus-minus. In a close game, Coach Dwayne Casey made the call. DeMar got benched with over 14 minutes left and didn't return. That stretch saw the Raptors tie the game with a clutch 3 from OG, but DeMar watched it unfold from the sideline. Then came the buzzer beater from LeBron James, and Toronto fell behind 3-0. DeMar admitted it stung, saying he just wanted to help, but the benching spoke volumes. It was rare for a star to be pulled that late in a playoff game, and the questions piled up. Was he really the guy for big moments? Game 4 came and went. Another loss, another sweep, a top seed, swept out in the second round. Not long after, DeMar was traded to San Antonio for Kawhi Leonard. That move changed everything for Toronto. But for DeMar, the benching in that Game 3 became a symbol, not just of one bad night, but of a franchise deciding to chase a different future. Tyrese Halliburton. In the 2025 Finals, the Pacers had clawed their way to Game 7. It was the biggest moment in the franchise's modern history, and Halliburton was at the center of it all, running the show, hitting clutch shots, and leading Indiana's charge. Then just over halfway through the first quarter, it all shattered. On a simple drive, he planted off his right foot and went down hard. Non-contact, no defender, just a sharp stop and a fall that silenced the arena. The diagnosis came quickly. A torn right Achilles tendon. He'd already been managing a right calf strain from earlier in the series. That stress on his lower leg may have tipped the scale. 1 second, he was 3 for 4, from deep and leading the Pacers' offense. The next, he was pounding the floor in pain. And just like that, Indiana's best player was gone. Without him, the Pacers struggled. Oklahoma City outscored them 56-43 in the second half and sealed the title with a 103-91 win. Halliburton's injury was more than a game changer. It was a series-ending blow. The Pacers said he'd likely miss the entire next season. Achilles injuries don't just take time, they reshape players. He said he had no regrets, that he'd do it all again for his teammates. But for fans, the image of him going down in Game 7 will never be easy to forget. Joel Embiid. In 2019, Game 7 of the Eastern Semifinals came down to one final possession. The score was tied at 90, and Kawhi Leonard had the ball. Embiid contested the shot, a fadeaway from the right baseline. Kawhi launched it over Embiid's outstretched arm. Then, the ball hit the rim. Once, twice, 3 times, 4. That moment froze the building. Then it dropped. Toronto won. Philadelphia was done. The reaction was instant. Embiid turned and walked off in tears. Not frustration, not quiet disappointment, full heartbreak. Cameras caught him sobbing on his way out, head buried into Marc Gasol's shoulder. The opposing center, then again in the tunnel, where his girlfriend tried to console him. It wasn't just the loss, it was how it happened. That wild, unpredictable bounce. That split second when hope hung on a rim. He finished the game shooting 6 of 18, and that stat didn't help the pain. This wasn't a random night in February. It was the deepest shot in Sixers' recent memory. His coach, Brett Brown, said it was the kind of moment that could fuel Embiid long term. Maybe. But in that exact moment, it just crushed him. The image of him walking off, crying, is one of the most raw reactions the league has seen after a buzzer beater. A game and a season ended in total disbelief. Paul George, in 2014, during a Team USA scrimmage ahead of the FIBA World Cup, he suffered one of the most traumatic injuries in basketball history. While chasing down James Harden on a fast break, George landed awkwardly. His right leg smashed into the base of the hoop. In an instant, both the tibia and fibula in his lower right leg fractured. Openly, visibly. The type of break that makes everyone stop breathing. The scrimmage was canceled on the spot. It was a compound fracture, meaning the bones pierced the skin. He was stretchered off with his leg stabilized in an air cast. Surgery followed quickly, likely involving a long metal rod down the tibia and screws for stabilization. Recovery wasn't just about bone healing. It meant nerve, tissue, and psychological repair. There was no timeline, just the hope that he'd walk and play again. Amazingly, George returned that same season, April 5th, 2015, scoring 13 points in 15 minutes against Miami. He only played 6 games, but his presence was bigger than the box score. Still, the injury altered everything. He lost some explosiveness. Analysts started wondering about what might have been. That moment also shifted how players viewed international exhibition risks. A freak injury in a non-NBA setting nearly changed a career. And for fans, it's still one of the most jarring visuals in basketball. The moment his leg gave out, the gym fell silent, and so did the basketball world. Klay Thompson. In Game 6 of the 2019 Finals, he went up for a fast break dunk and landed awkwardly on his left leg after contact from behind. He stayed down, holding his knee. Moments later, he limped back onto the floor and hit 2 free throws. A gritty move that masked how serious it really was. Imaging confirmed a torn left ACL. That meant surgery, rehab, and the end of his season. He missed the entire 2019 to 2020 year, but just as he was preparing to return, another hit came. In November 2020, during a pickup game in Los Angeles, Thompson took a few dribbles, pulled up, and then turned to run. That's when it happened. His right Achilles gave out. No collision, just a snap. Another season gone, 2 straight years off the court. He later admitted that rushing back from the ACL may have thrown off his balance and mechanics. He'd gained weight during recovery, and maybe that stress showed up in his Achilles. He called the second injury even harder to accept, not just physically, but emotionally. Without him, Golden State fell to the bottom of the league. He returned in January 2022, but the questions hung over everything. Could he still guard elite wings, move laterally, stay healthy? Missing over 2 years changed how people saw him and how he saw himself. The splash had paused, but not stopped. Ja Morant. The 2023 playoffs were a mess for Memphis, and Ja's quote, "I'm fine in the West," didn't age well. He said it during the season, brushing off Western Conference threats like it was nothing. After the Lakers bounced them in the first round, that quote echoed through every meme, post, and headline. Morant didn't dodge it. He said he'd deal with the heat. He also admitted his off-court issues had an impact, taking blame for not being fully locked in. The second-seeded Grizzlies faced a 7th-seeded Lakers team that looked nothing like an underdog. In Game 1, Morant scored 18 before crashing to the floor, injuring his right hand trying to finish over Anthony Davis. The team called it a soft tissue injury. He missed Game 2, and when he returned, he wasn't the same. By Game 6, the closeout, Morant went 3 of 16 from the field with just 10 points. The Lakers' defense, led by Davis, clogged the paint and forced him to settle. His drives lacked the same pop. His handle looked cautious. And without his scoring punch, Memphis collapsed. Game 6 ended 125-85. Brutal. It was a hard fall. Bold words, nagging injury, early exit. That series marked a turning point for how people viewed Morant, a rising star suddenly facing tough questions about durability, leadership, and when to talk versus when to prove. Kawhi Leonard. In Game 1 of the 2017 Western Conference Finals, he was rolling, already battling a nagging left ankle injury. He'd still dropped 26 points and had the Spurs up big on Golden State. Then came the moment. Mid-third quarter, Leonard took a corner jumper with Zaza closing out. After releasing the shot, Kawhi came down, right onto Zaza's foot. His ankle buckled, and that was it. Leonard limped off and never returned to that series. Zaza was whistled for a foul on the closeout. Spurs coach Greg Popovich ripped the play afterward, calling it reckless, dangerous, and unnatural. He made it clear he didn't care about Zaza's intent. Kawhi's landing space had been invaded, and the damage was done. The Spurs, who led by over 20 points when Leonard went down, lost that game, and every game after. It ended in a 4-game sweep. That one moment didn't just change the series. It sparked a rule change. The league implemented what's now informally known as the Zaza rule. It gave refs the authority to call flagrant or technical fouls for closeouts that crowd a shooter's landing zone, even without intent to injure. Zaza later defended himself, saying it wasn't intentional, just unfortunate. But the legacy of that play stuck. It shifted how defenders close out, how shooters land, and how referees protect players in vulnerable moments. And for Kawhi, it was a season-derailing flashpoint. Jason Tatum. In Game 4 of the 2025 Eastern Semifinals, disaster hit. With just under 3 minutes left, he lunged for a loose ball after a Jaylen Brown turnover. No contact, no twist, just a plant and a collapse. He reached down, grabbed his lower right leg, and couldn't get up. The Celtics' worst fears were confirmed later. A ruptured right Achilles tendon. That ended his postseason. He underwent surgery soon after. The rupture, being non-contact, lined up with classic tendon failure mechanics. Push-off, sudden stretch, a loud pop. Tatum later said it sounded like a gunshot. Rehab began immediately, but there's no shortcut. Achilles recovery for athletes often takes 9 to 12 months, sometimes more. Full explosiveness doesn't always return. The Celtics made it clear. No rushing. He's been open about how tough it's been mentally. He leaned on his family. He stopped using opioids for pain and switched to a newer alternative. 4 months in, he's already shown clips of weightlifting and light workouts. Still, no return date is set. The team hasn't planned around a quick comeback. He's been in meetings, film, sessions, and around the group, but not on the floor. The timing of the injury, in the middle of a title chase just 1 season after a championship, made it even heavier. 1 second, he was Boston's cornerstone in another deep run. The next, he was wondering if he'd ever be the same. Zion Williamson. In the 2024 play-in game against the Lakers, he looked unstoppable. Through 36 minutes, he racked up 40 points, 11 rebounds, and 5 assists. Every drive was power, every finish controlled. But with just over 3 minutes left and the game tied at 95, things changed. After hitting a floater over Anthony Davis, Zion grimaced and walked toward the bench. He threw down a towel, frustrated, and disappeared into the tunnel. The Pelicans said it was left leg soreness. Later, it was confirmed. A left hamstring strain. It wasn't a dramatic fall or collision, just a mid-play reaction that turned the game. He just tied it up, and suddenly, he was gone. The Pelicans couldn't recover. Without him, they lost that night to the Lakers. He called the injury super demoralizing, especially given how dominant he'd been all game. He missed the next play-in game against Sacramento, though the Pelicans managed to win it. Zion stayed hopeful, saying a playoff return was definitely realistic, depending on how his rehab went. Still, the timing couldn't have been worse. A career night, playoff stakes, a tied game, all stopped by one strain. It wasn't just the numbers. It was the rhythm, the control, the momentum, and then nothing. A towel, a tunnel, and a silence that changed everything. Damian Lillard. In Game 4 of the 2025 first round, things went bad, fast. Just midway through the first quarter, Lillard planted his left foot, then dropped to the floor clutching his leg. No contact, no foul, just the dreaded signs of an Achilles rupture. He couldn't stand, had to be helped off, and wouldn't return. The Bucks lost that game to Indiana, 129-103. An MRI confirmed the worst, a torn left Achilles tendon. Surgery followed, performed by Dr. Neil Elatrish, one of the most trusted names in sports medicine. This came just weeks after Lillard had recovered from a deep vein thrombosis in his right calf that forced him to miss the final 14 games of the regular season. Some questioned whether the downtime and quick ramp-up may have strained the Achilles. Before the injury, Lillard had averaged nearly 25 points per game, but in this series, his rhythm was off. Then came the tear. He was ruled out for the playoffs immediately. Doc Rivers said Lillard was emotional, saying, "I can't believe I'm here, and I'm not going out this way." Postseason, Milwaukee waived and stretched his contract. He then signed a 3-year deal to return to Portland. At age 34, the odds aren't kind. Achilles injuries are tough. The fall was brutal, returning from one major condition only to suffer another. And for a player known for resilience, that made it even harder to watch. Devin Booker. In Game 7 of the 2022 Western Semifinals, the top-seeded Suns hosted Dallas and got dismantled. The Mavericks led by 30 at halftime. Luka Doncic alone had 27 by the break, matching the entire Suns team. It wasn't just a slow start, it was a collapse, a full-speed train wreck from the opening quarter. By the third, the lead ballooned past 40. The final score, 123-90. Booker's night unraveled early. He finished with just 11 points on 3 of 14 shooting, missed all 4 of his threes, and committed a season-high 8 turnovers. For someone carrying Phoenix's offense, the timing couldn't have been worse. It wasn't just an off night. It was an unraveling in the biggest game of the year, at home. Phoenix had dominated most of the regular season and entered that Game 7 with expectations to advance. Instead, they got one of the worst home performances in Game 7 history. Fans and analysts didn't hold back. The Suns weren't just beaten, they were embarrassed. Booker's name was front and center in that narrative. The team's offense stalled, the defense never showed up, and Booker's struggles became the symbol of a total collapse. It wasn't just a bad game. It was a dark, defining one, where the lights were brightest and everything fell apart. Donovan Mitchell. In the 2020 bubble, Utah jumped out to a 3-1 lead against Denver, and Mitchell looked untouchable. He opened the series with 57 points, one of the highest single-game totals in playoff history. By Game 4, he'd added another 51, pushing the Jazz within one win of advancing. Through 7 games, he averaged over 36 points on efficient shooting, barely missing at the free throw line. But then, the collapse started. Game 5, Denver fought back behind 42 from Jamal Murray. Game 6, Murray exploded for 50, and Utah's defense unraveled. Game 7 was brutal, a grinding, low-scoring battle. Utah managed just 78 points, and Denver edged them out by 2. Mitchell shot 9 of 22, and Utah couldn't close. The final possession ended with a missed 3 after a turnover. Mitchell was left hunched over at half court. Later, he said, "I didn't really know what else to do." His efforts were huge, but the outcome was a first-round exit. Blowing a 3-1 lead inside the bubble, where no home crowd could shift momentum, turned this into a lasting mark. Mitchell had monster numbers, but Utah fell apart under pressure. The Jazz couldn't counter Murray's bursts, couldn't finish when it mattered, and the series turned from career-defining to gut-wrenching. Jalen Brunson. Game 7 of the Eastern semifinals was already shaping up to be a grind for New York, but things took a brutal turn when Brunson fractured his left hand in the third quarter. He was contesting Tyrese Halliburton, swiping at the ball, and immediately felt something go wrong. Just like that, he had to leave the game. At the time, the Knicks were already trailing by 18, and losing their leader only made things worse. Before exiting, he had 17 points and 9 assists in 29 minutes. Not bad, especially considering the mountain of pressure he was carrying. After the game, with his hand wrapped and immobilized, he was asked if the season was a success. His answer? A very blunt no. Now, New York came into that game limping. OG Anunoby was back after a hamstring issue, but he barely contributed and had to leave early. Key players were already missing or limited. Brunson going down just piled on top of everything else. He'd been averaging over 31 points in the series before the injury. The guy was carrying them, plain and simple, but the combination of fatigue, injuries, and Indiana's depth completely swallowed any hope they had left. That fractured hand felt like the end before the buzzer ever sounded. Jamal Murray, April 12th, 2021, late in the game against Golden State, and Denver's season took a sharp turn. With just under a minute left, Murray drove hard toward the basket, trying to split 2 defenders when his left knee suddenly gave out. No collision, no contact, just a brutal, twisting moment that ended with him on the floor, pounding the court in pain. He refused the wheelchair, though, choosing instead to hop off the court with help. The next day, the MRI confirmed it, a torn ACL in his left knee. Season over. At that point, he was having one of his best years, averaging over 21 points, nearly 5 assists, and around 4 rebounds per game. He was shooting close to 48% from the field and about 41% from 3. Just 2 months earlier, he had dropped 50 points against Cleveland without taking a single free throw. Denver was sitting strong in 4th place out west, building serious chemistry with Jokic, Gordon, and Porter Jr., and people were talking about real championship potential. When Murray went down, that talk vanished. Denver lost a huge piece right before the playoffs, and it changed everything. He missed the entire next season, returning in October 2022. The whole story feels cruel. A young star climbing fast, then stopped cold in a split second, forcing the Nuggets to rethink everything. LaMelo Ball, the 2022 play-in game against Atlanta, was supposed to be a turning point, but instead it became a blowout that cut Charlotte's postseason hopes off at the knees. Atlanta didn't just win, they steamrolled. The final score was 132-103, and most of the damage was done right after halftime. The Hawks dropped 42 points in the third quarter while Charlotte managed only 24, and from that point, the outcome was pretty much locked. LaMelo led the Hornets in scoring with 26, but it came on a night where nothing felt smooth. He went 7 for 25 from the field. His shot selection got tougher as the game slipped away, and the rhythm just never showed up. He did make 8 out of 10 from the free throw line, but that barely dented the gap. As a team, Charlotte shot under 38%, while Atlanta hit over 52. The Hawks grabbed 54 rebounds compared to Charlotte's 41, and they made sure every mistake hurt. 14 turnovers from the Hornets turned into fast breaks and momentum shifts. Oh, and to make things more chaotic, the team bus got delayed by a freight train on the way to the arena, Miles Bridges even got tossed after arguing a goaltend call. For LaMelo, it was a rough night, high stakes, cold shooting, and no chance to bounce back. Cade Cunningham. The 2024 season was one long endurance test. Detroit finished with 14 wins and 68 losses, the worst record in the league and in franchise history. They dropped 28 games in a row. That is not a typo. While the team spiraled, Cade kept grinding. He played 62 games, started every one, and put up career numbers: 22.7 points, 7.5 assists, 4.3 rebounds. He shot nearly 45% from the field, about 35 from deep, and nearly 87 from the line. He had some huge nights too: 43 points against Atlanta, 41 against Brooklyn, but none of it translated into win. Then in early January, his left knee gave out mid-game. He had to exit after scoring just 3 points. That knee strain was part of a pattern, a star giving everything, while his team gave very little back. The roster around him was unstable. There was no consistent help, no rhythm, just chaos. Every game felt like he had to do it all: create shots, run the offense, absorb the losses. That wear added up. Reports mentioned lingering pains, and it was obvious he was frustrated. Detroit's own recap admitted his shine got swallowed by the season's failure. When you're the only bright spot in a collapsing team, every loss hits harder. Every injury stings deeper. Cade was rising, but the Pistons kept dragging him down. Zach LaVine. April 14th, 2023, Chicago had one game to stay alive, and LaVine picked the worst possible time to go cold. The Bulls faced Miami in a winner-go-home play-in battle, and Miami walked out with a 102-91 victory. The stakes could not have been clearer. Lose, and the season's done. LaVine, he shot 6 for 21. That is 28% from the field, in a game where offense was already hard to come by. He finished with 15 points, leading the team in shot attempts, but not in production. DeMar had 26 points and 9 assists, while Alex Caruso added 16. Meanwhile, LaVine couldn't buy rhythm. Shot after shot clanked, and when your volume scorer is ice cold, the whole game plan falls apart. Chicago was within reach through stretches, but that gap never closed. The collapse wasn't about effort, it was about execution. LaVine had the green light, but the shots didn't fall. And in elimination games, that's what makes the difference. Writers didn't hold back. They pointed to this exact moment when they talked about how LaVine failed to deliver when it mattered most. It was a cold ending to a season already filled with tension. And in this case, the lead scorer's off night sent them home. DeAndre Ayton. In October 2019, DeAndre Ayton got hit with a 25-game suspension for violating the NBA and NBPA anti-drug program. And here's the thing, it wasn't even a traditional steroid. The substance was a diuretic. But don't let that fool you. Diuretics are fully banned under NBA rules because they're used as masking agents to hide other banned substances. The league doesn't care what the substance is classified as elsewhere. If it's on the banned list, it's a violation, period. Ayton was only in his second NBA season at the time. He'd just come off a rookie year, averaging 16.3 points and 10.3 rebounds per game. That's a legitimate all-star level debut. Then the suspension hit. The Phoenix Suns had started that season 3-2 before he went down, and losing him disrupted whatever early rhythm they were building. Missing 25 out of 82 games means he sat out nearly 1/3 of the entire season. That's not a minor absence. Ayton publicly stated he didn't knowingly take a banned substance, and that might even be true, but the NBA operates under strict liability, meaning intent doesn't matter at all. If it's in your system, you're suspended. Full stop. No exceptions, no investigations into how it got there. He also forfeited millions in salary from those missed game checks, which is one of the most painful parts of any suspension outside of the actual games missed. What makes this case stand out is the profile. Ayton was the #1 overall pick in the 2018 draft. A suspension like this at that stage of a career carries serious weight. It became one of the highest profile PED-related cases involving a former first overall selection in league history. Terry Rozier, in March 2023, a Charlotte Hornets game caught the attention of federal investigators, not because of anything that happened on the court in the traditional sense, but because of what was happening in the betting market. Unusual wagering activity had been detected specifically on Terry Rozier's statistical prop bets, with heavy money placed on his performance going under. Rozier left that game early due to injury. and the betting outcomes lined up with exactly that result. That's when federal prosecutors got involved. According to Reuters, authorities alleged that Rozier informed a third party in advance about his plans to exit the game early. That information was then used to place over $200,000 in wagers on his underperformance. That's not a small side bet. That's a coordinated financial move using insider information about a player's own participation. He was charged with wire fraud conspiracy and money laundering conspiracy. Rozier pleaded not guilty and denied any wrongdoing. What makes this even more layered is that the NBA had actually investigated the same game before the federal case and initially found no rule violation. But after the federal charges came, the NBA placed him on unpaid leave. According to the Wall Street Journal, the case was part of a broader gambling investigation involving multiple individuals and organized betting networks, which means Rozier wasn't the only name attached to this. The situation drew direct comparisons to the Jontay Porter case, where a player received a lifetime ban for similar betting-related manipulation. Rozier's case became one of the first major NBA situations tied directly to prop bet manipulation allegations at this level. The league's concern about player prop betting markets, especially involving minor statistical outcomes, grew significantly because of exactly this situation. Paul George. In late January 2026, Paul George was handed a 25-game suspension for violating the NBA anti-drug program. The league didn't publicly name the exact substance, which is standard procedure in most PED cases, but George himself addressed it. He described it as a poorly timed decision and linked it directly to the physical strain he'd been managing following injury. He'd undergone arthroscopic knee surgery in the offseason, leading into the 2025 to 26 season. And according to the New York Post, the decision that led to the violation was connected to his recovery process. He was averaging approximately 16 points per game before the suspension came down. During those 25 games, he was allowed to practice with the team, but couldn't attend games or participate in any official capacity on game night. That absence hit hard because it came during a stretch of the season that directly affected playoff positioning. The competitive timing made the impact much larger than just the number of games missed. Like every NBA PED case, strict liability applied. George said he didn't fully understand the consequences of the decision at the time he made it, which speaks to how easy it is to cross a line in a league with over 140 banned substances. The case is historically notable because of who George is. He's a multiple-time All-Star, a former Defensive Player of the Year, and a player widely considered to be on the path to Hall of Fame consideration. High-profile PED suspensions at that level are genuinely rare in the NBA. His situation put a spotlight on the pressure elite players face to maintain performance during recovery, and how that pressure can lead to decisions with major consequences. By the way, if you guys want to subscribe, I'm going to be posting every day. Thanks. Anyways, Chris Webber. Before Chris Webber ever played a single NBA game, he was already at the center of one of the most damaging scandals in college basketball history. The connection starts with a man named Ed Martin, a booster who ran an illegal lottery and numbers operation out of Michigan. Martin used that money to funnel cash and gifts to players, and Webber was one of them. According to federal records, Webber received approximately $280,000 in cash and gifts. The payment started in 1988 while Webber was still in high school and continued through his time with Michigan's Fab Five from 1988 through 1993. Martin wasn't just some enthusiastic fan. He was laundering money from an illegal gambling operation directly through player payments. When federal investigators caught up with the situation, Webber was indicted in 2002 on charges of obstruction of justice and lying to a federal grand jury. He had misrepresented his relationship with Martin and denied receiving the money under oath. He eventually pleaded guilty to criminal contempt, paid a $100,000 fine, and completed 330 hours of community service. The NCAA came down hard on Michigan. The entire 1992 to 93 season was vacated. Both Final Four appearances from 1992 and 1993 were erased. 113 wins were vacated. The banners came down from the arena. Michigan also received a postseason ban in 2002 to 2003 and 4 years of probation. Webber himself was banned from association with the Michigan program until 2013. He also received an 8-game NBA suspension connected to the lying case. It remains one of the largest NCAA scandals ever recorded. Jontay Porter. Jontay Porter didn't just break an NBA rule. He broke multiple at the same time, and the league responded accordingly. In April 2024, the NBA permanently banned Porter from the league including the NBA G League. That's a lifetime ban. The findings were specific and detailed. The NBA confirmed that Porter limited his own participation in games intentionally, bet on NBA games, and provided confidential injury and health information to bettors so they could profit from it. One documented example involved an associate placing an $80,000 bet with a potential payout of $1.1 million, all based on inside information Porter had shared. The scheme centered on player prop bets. Bettors with advanced knowledge of his plans would hammer the under on his statistical lines. Then Porter would exit games early, making the bets cash. That's not a technicality or a gray area. That's direct manipulation of competitive outcomes for financial gain. He pleaded guilty in a federal case, facing charges tied to wire fraud, conspiracy, and game-related betting manipulation. The league's response didn't stop at the ban. His case directly triggered a rule, change now known as the John Tay Porter Rule, which removed prop bets for certain low-contract players from legal sportsbooks. He's the first NBA player ever banned for gambling while on a two-way contract. What Porter did sits at the absolute top of sports integrity violation. Betting on your own performance, intentionally underperforming, leaking private medical information to gamblers, and then watching the money come in is about as direct a betrayal of competitive sport as it gets. The lifetime ban wasn't surprising. Given what was proven, it was the only appropriate response. Malik Beasley. In June 2025, Beasley became the subject of a federal gambling investigation. The case was handled by the United States Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of New York, and the NBA launched a separate internal investigation at the same time. The trigger was suspicious betting activity. A United States sportsbook detected an unusual surge in wagers on Beasley's player props. One specific case, flagged by CBS Sports, involved heavy action on him, recording under 2.5 rebounds in a January 2024 game while he was on the Milwaukee Bucks. Beasley recorded 6 rebounds in that game, meaning the suspicious bets lost. But the volume of the activity itself was enough to launch a full investigation. Investigators looked at whether Beasley had any connection to betting on NBA-related outcomes tied to his own statistical lines. He voluntarily cooperated with the process, including turning over phone data, according to Yahoo Sports. While that cooperation was happening, his career was put on hold. He had been in talks for a 3-year, $42 million contract, and those negotiations stopped PED immediately after the investigation became public. He entered what was described by Front Office Sports as investigative purgatory, an unsigned free agent with a federal case hanging over him. Then in August 2025, his attorneys confirmed he was no longer a target of the federal investigation. No charges were filed. No indictment came. Reports also indicated the NBA's investigation did not find conclusive wrongdoing, and no formal discipline followed. No suspension, no confirmed rule violation, no proven action on his part. The investigation was real, the career consequences were real, but no wrongdoing was ever established. James Wiseman. James Wiseman's college career at Memphis lasted 3 games. That's it, 3 games. And the reason comes down to $11,500 that changed everything before his freshman season even got going. In November 2019, the NCAA ruled Wiseman ineligible. The violation was tied to money given to his mother, and the source of that money was Penny Hardaway, who had become the Memphis head coach. Back in 2017, before Hardaway was a coach, he made a $1 million donation to Memphis. Under NCAA rules, that donation classified him as a booster, and boosters are prohibited from providing financial benefits to recruits or their families. Full stop. The $11,500 was used to help Wiseman's family relocate from Nashville to Memphis. That relocation payment was classified as an impermissible recruiting benefit. Wiseman had already played 3 games for Memphis while technically ineligible, which created a second violation on top of the first. The NCAA issued a 12-game suspension and required Wiseman to donate $11,500 to charity. Memphis tried to fight it legally, obtaining a temporary injunction that let him play briefly, but the NCAA upheld the suspension after appeal, and Wiseman made the decision to leave Memphis entirely and prepare for the NBA draft. His college career ended at 3 games. He was selected 2nd overall by the Golden State Warriors in the 2020 draft. The case became one of the most prominent examples of NCAA amateurism enforcement in the years before NIL rules existed and legalized exactly this kind of financial support for prospects. The rule that got him didn't survive much longer. After his situation, he just ran into it at exactly the wrong time. Wilson Chandler, In August 2019, Wilson Chandler was suspended 25 games by the NBA for violating the anti-drug program. The substance was ipamorelin, a growth hormone-releasing peptide. That's a specific category of banned substance that stimulates the body's production of human growth hormone, which directly supports recovery and muscle development. Under NBA policy, it falls under the steroids and performance-enhancing drugs category, and a first-time violation in that category means an automatic 25-game suspension, which works out to about 31% of the regular season. Chandler said the substance came from a prescribed treatment during injury rehabilitation and that neither he nor his doctor realized it was on the banned list at the time. That explanation might be completely accurate, but it doesn't change anything under NBA rules because the league enforces strict liability. Intent is irrelevant. What's in your system is what matters. The financial hit was significant. He forfeited approximately $582,000 in salary from missed game checks. He had just signed with the Brooklyn Nets for the 2019-20 season, so he missed the first 25 games of his tenure with the new team, not debuting until mid-December. Chandler's case was also part of a stretch that became notable in league circles. Within a matter of months in 2019, DeAndre Ayton, John Collins, and Wilson Chandler all received 25-game suspensions under the anti-drug program. 3 suspensions of that length in that short a window was described as unusual at the time by The Ringer. His case specifically reinforced a critical point about the modern game. Even substances taken in legitimate rehabilitation contexts are not exempt if they appear on the banned list. John Collins. In November 2019, John Collins was suspended 25 games by the NBA for violating the anti-drug program. He tested positive for peptide 2, a substance tied to growth hormone release, which the league bans because of its ability to enhance recovery, endurance, and muscle development. Collins was 22 years old and in his 3rd NBA season when the suspension came down. He was also the Atlanta Hawks' leading rebounder and 2nd leading scorer at the time, meaning his absence wasn't a depth issue. It was a significant rotation problem for a team that depended on him as a primary interior presence. He forfeited a substantial portion of his salary for the 25 missed games. As is standard under the anti-drug program for violations of this kind, Collins stated the positive test came from a supplement he had been taking that unknowingly contained a banned substance. That's a defense that comes up often in PED cases across professional sports, and it's sometimes true. But the NBA's strict liability policy means it doesn't affect the outcome. If the substance is detected, the suspension follows, regardless of how it entered the system or whether the player had any idea it was banned. His case came within the same few-month window as the Ayton and Chandler suspensions, a stretch that The Ringer described as unusual given how rarely 25-game PED suspensions stack up that close together. The Hawks struggled in his absence. He eventually returned and continued to develop into one of their primary offensive pieces going forward. The broader lesson from his case was the same one reinforced by every supplement contamination defense. In a league with over 140 banned substances, what's on the label doesn't always reflect what's inside. O.J. Mayo's NBA career ended not with a trade or a retirement announcement, but with a league ban, and the path to that ban actually started years earlier. In January 2011, Mayo received a 10-game suspension without pay for testing positive for dehydroepiandrosterone, better known as DHEA. DHEA is a hormone precursor linked directly to testosterone production, and the NBA classifies it as a performance-enhancing drug. Mayo said publicly that the positive test came from an over-the-counter supplement and took full responsibility. The financial cost of that suspension was $405,109 in forfeited salary. He returned from that suspension and continued his career, but the story didn't end there. In July 2016, the league dismissed and disqualified Mayo from the NBA entirely. This second violation fell under the drugs of abuse category in the NBA and NBPA anti-drug program. Under NBA policy, a positive test for a substance in that category results in immediate dismissal from the league, not just a suspension. The league doesn't publicly disclose the exact substance involved in drugs of abuse cases, so the specific compound from the 2016 violation was never confirmed, but the outcome was clear. He was banned with a minimum 2-year wait before he could even apply for reinstatement. That reinstatement process alone signals how serious the violation was considered. His career was effectively over at 31 years old. What makes his case one of the more striking ones in this category is the progression: a PED violation in 2011, a full league ban in 2016. Two separate violations, 5 years apart, under two different categories of the same anti-drug program. It's one of the most severe drug-related career outcomes in NBA history. Joakim Noah. In March 2017, Noah was suspended 20 games without pay by the NBA for violating the anti-drug program. He tested positive for LGD 4033, which is also known as Ligandrol. LGD 4033 is a selective androgen receptor modulator, commonly called a SARM. It directly increases muscle mass, enhances strength, and accelerates recovery, all of which are performance advantages, which is exactly why it's listed on the World Anti-Doping Agency's prohibited list and banned under NBA policy. According to reports at the time, Noah's stated explanation was supplement contamination, the same defense raised in many NBA PED cases. The league's position, as always, is that intent doesn't change the outcome. The suspension was split across 2 seasons, covering the end of the 2016-17 season and the start of the 2017-18 season. Noah was 32 years old at the time and had already been dealing with a knee injury and declining performance. The timing made the situation worse because he was in the first year of a 4-year, $72 million contract he'd signed with the New York Knicks. That contract was already looking like a difficult situation on the court. The suspension only. Added to it, missing 20 games without pay on a deal that large means forfeiting a significant portion of salary for that stretch. Ligandrol is one of the most commonly flagged substances in professional sports drug testing globally because it's associated with rapid physical gain and has shown up in supplement products without being listed on the label. Noah's case reinforced how SARM-related violations had become an increasingly visible category in NBA anti-drug enforcement during that era. Tyreke Evans. On May 17, 2019, the NBA announced that Tyreke Evans had been dismissed and disqualified from the league for violating the anti-drug program. Not suspended, dismissed. That's a different level of consequence, and it reflects exactly how serious the violation was classified under the collective bargaining agreement. The NBA's policy separates substances into different categories. A positive test for a substance classified as a drug of abuse, which is separate from the PED category, results in immediate removal from the league, not a 10-game suspension or a 25-game suspension. Complete dismissal. Under the program's reinstatement structure, Evans had to wait a minimum of 2 years before he could even apply to return. The league does not publicly disclose the exact substance involved in drugs of abuse cases, so the specific compound was never confirmed. At the time of the violation, Evans was playing for the Indiana Pacers during the 2018-19 season and was approaching free agency. That free agency never happened in any meaningful way because the dismissal removed him from the league entirely. He was officially reinstated in 2022 after serving the full ban. That's 3 years from dismissal to reinstatement. Evans had shown real promise earlier in his career. He won the NBA Rookie of the Year award in 2010-11, averaging 20.1 points, 5.7 rebounds, and 5.8 assists per game, making him the first rookie in NBA history to average at least 20 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists. That context makes the 2019 dismissal a significant fall. He went from one of the most decorated rookie seasons in league history to a full league ban less than a decade later. Larry Sanders. Larry Sanders was suspended multiple times under the NBA and NBPA anti-drug program for marijuana-related violation, and the penalties got more severe each time. In April 2014, he received a 5-game suspension tied to failed drug tests. Less than a year later, in January 2015, he was suspended again. That second suspension was a minimum of 10 games without pay, and it came with an additional requirement. He had to complete a treatment program and reach full compliance before the league would reinstate him. That condition turned the 10-game minimum into an extended absence. He hadn't played since December 23, 2014, before the longer suspension was announced, which means he was already out of the rotation. The NBA's marijuana discipline structure at that time operated on a progressive scale. First violation led to entry into the marijuana program. Second, led to a fine. Third, triggered a suspension. Each additional violation after that resulted in longer and longer penalty. Sanders had worked his way deep into that escalating system. He publicly acknowledged his belief in marijuana's medicinal use, which effectively confirmed the substance involved. His violations were classified under the drugs of abuse category rather than the PED category, making them a separate but equally enforceable part of the anti-drug program. The career consequences were severe. In 2013, he signed a 4-year, $44 million extension with the Milwaukee Bucks. That contract became nearly worthless from an on-court standpoint. As his absences mounted and the suspensions piled up, his career effectively collapsed under the weight of the repeated violations. He became one of the most prominent multi-time drug policy offenders in the NBA during the mid-2010s, and the combination of the suspensions and the contract made it one of the more striking cases of that period. Nick Calathes. In April 2014, Nick Calathes was suspended 20 games by the NBA for violating the anti-drug policy. He tested positive for tamoxifen, a substance that's primarily known as a breast cancer treatment drug. But in sports, it's classified as a masking agent. Masking agents are banned not because of what they do on their own, but because of what they can hide. They're used to conceal other banned substances in drug testing, which is why the NBA bans over 140 substances, including tamoxifen, regardless of the reason a player might claim to have taken. The timing of the suspension was brutal. It hit immediately before the 2014 NBA playoffs, making Calathes unavailable for the Memphis Grizzlies' first-round series against the Oklahoma City Thunder. He'd been averaging 4.9 points and 2.9 assists that season as part of the Grizzlies' rotation. His legal team argued the substance came from an over-the-counter supplement taken for a medical condition unrelated to performance enhancement. Independent testing reportedly found no testosterone or steroids in his system, which his camp used to argue he wasn't trying to cheat in any traditional sense, but the NBA's strict liability standard doesn't include an exemption for that argument. The league doesn't require proof that the substance actually enhanced performance. The only requirement is that it was present and that it's on the banned list. Both were true, so the suspension stood. Calathes publicly challenged the ruling and called it unfair, but the league upheld it. His case became one of the most cited examples of a player being suspended specifically for a masking agent without any confirmed steroid use behind it. That distinction made it unique and genuinely controversial in how it applied the rules. Roger Brown. Roger Brown never played a single NBA game, not because he wasn't good enough, but because the league banned him before he ever got the chance. The story starts with the 1961 NCAA basketball gambling scandal, one of the largest in the history of the sport. The scandal involved 37 players across 22 schools, organized crime, point shaving, and a central figure named Jack Molinas, a former NBA player who had already been banned from the league for betting on games. Brown's connection was straightforward. He admitted to receiving money and benefits from Molinas while he was in college. That association was enough. He wasn't charged with point shaving. He wasn't charged with fixing game. No evidence ever linked him to actually manipulating any outcome. But the NBA, at that time, enforced a zero-tolerance policy on gambling connections, and even indirect financial ties to a banned gambler were treated as a disqualifying offense. Brown was effectively blocked from the entire NBA pipeline and went undrafted in 1964, 1965, and 1966. The league refused to approve his contracts. He eventually turned to the ABA, which did allow players the NBA had banned. In the ABA, Brown became a legitimate star. He made 4 All-Star appearances, won 3 championships, and was named Finals Most Valuable Player in 1970. His lifetime NBA ban was never lifted during his playing career. Decades after his career ended, the Basketball Hall of Fame inducted him in 2013, recognizing what he accomplished in the ABA. His case remains one of the most extreme examples in professional basketball history of a career being destroyed not by proven wrongdoing, but by association alone. Rashard Lewis. In August 2009, Rashard Lewis was suspended 10 games without pay by the NBA for violating the anti-drug program. He tested positive for elevated testosterone levels with the specific substance identified as dihydroepiandrosterone, the same compound known as DHEA. DHEA is a hormone precursor that the body converts into testosterone, and the NBA classifies it as a performance-enhancing drug. Lewis stated publicly that he had taken an over-the-counter supplement late in the 2008-09 season and that the supplement contained DHEA without his knowledge. He accepted full responsibility and issued apologies to the team, the fans, and the Orlando Magic organization. The financial penalty was approximately $1.6 million in forfeited salary. That's a significant number for a 10-game suspension and reflects how much he was earning on his contract at the time. The timing added an extra layer to the story. The positive test was revealed after the 2009 NBA Finals run. That season, Lewis had averaged 17.7 points in 79 regular season games for Orlando, and the Magic reached the finals before losing to the Los Angeles Lakers. The suspension was announced in the offseason after that run, meaning it came at one of the highest profile moments in his career. DHEA is particularly notable as a repeat offender substance in NBA PED cases. O.J. Mayo also tested positive for the same compound in 2011. It keeps appearing in cases where players claim supplement contamination, partly because DHEA is sold legally over the counter in the United States, even though it's fully banned under NBA and WADA rules. Lewis' case is one of the clearest examples of that gap between legal availability and league prohibition. Connie Hawkins lost years of his career, over $200, and a connection he never acted on. In 1961, the college basketball world was rocked by a massive point shaving scandal involving 37 players across 22 schools, all tied to a gambling ring led by Jack Molinas. Hawkins' name came up in the investigation because he had borrowed $200 from Molinas. That money was repaid by his brother before the scandal even broke. Here's the part that makes this case stand out from everything else. At the time, Hawkins was a freshman at the University of Iowa. Under NCAA rules that were in place then, freshmen were not eligible to play varsity basketball. He literally could not have participated in any fixed games because he wasn't allowed on the court. He was never charged. He was never indicted. No evidence ever connected him to actually fixing a game or participating in any betting scheme. Despite all of that, he was expelled from the University of Iowa and informally blocked from the NBA. The league officially banned him in 1966. He went undrafted in 1964, 1965, and 1966. Teams wouldn't touch him. He eventually filed an antitrust lawsuit against the NBA, and the ban was overturned in 1969, allowing him to enter the league at 27 years old. He was named an All-Star in 4 of his first 5 NBA seasons after finally getting in. The years he lost to a ban based on a $200 loan that was repaid and 0 proven wrongdoing make his case one of the most unjust situations in professional basketball history. He was inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame in 1992. LeBron James. Before LeBron James ever stepped into an NBA arena, Sports Illustrated had already put him on their cover at 16 years old with the headline, "The Chosen One." That's not a nickname his teammates gave him. That's a national publication declaring a high schooler the future of basketball. ESPN broadcast his high school games on national television while he was still at St. Vincent St. Mary in Akron, Ohio. Nike signed him before he played a single professional minute. The pressure didn't start at the draft. It started in 2001. He got drafted first overall in 2003, and even that felt expected. His rookie year, he averaged 20.9 points, 5.5 rebounds, and 5.9 assists per game. For most players, that's a career highlight. For LeBron, it was just proof he belonged. By year 4, he was putting up 27 plus points per game and chasing his first MVP. But here's where the pressure got real. The 2007 Finals. Cleveland gets swept by San Antonio. LeBron's 22 years old, and he's already getting criticized, like a veteran who wasted a title window. Then 2010 arrived, and he averages 21.8 points per game against Boston in the second round after a 27-point regular season. Game 5, he scores 15. The backlash was instant. Then the decision happens. He announces on live television that he's taking his talents to South Beach. And overnight, he goes from hero to villain in a way no athlete had experienced before. The 2011 Finals, he averages 17.8 points per game. Game 4, he scores 8 points. It becomes one of the most talked about collapses in finals history. He's also the only player ever held to the standard of being simultaneously the best player alive and the greatest of all time, starting at age 16. That's not a career. That's a sentence. Zion Williamson. Zion Williamson was putting up mixtapes in high school that were getting millions of views before most players his age had a single college offer. By the time he got to Duke, ESPN had installed a dedicated camera just for him during the 2019 NCAA tournament. They called it the Zion Cam. That tells you everything about where the expectations were before he ever played a professional game. He gets drafted first overall in 2019 by New Orleans. And the expectation wasn't just that he'd be good, it was that he'd replace Anthony Davis as the franchise cornerstone and become an MVP level player within a few years. Jordan Brand signed him to a $75 million deal as a rookie. The marketing machine was already treating him like a finished product. His rookie year numbers were legitimate: 22.5 points per game on 58.3% shooting. That's historically efficient for a first-year player. But he only played 24 games. The season after that, 61 games, then 0, then 29. 4 seasons, 114 games total. The criticism wasn't about what he did on the court, it was about his weight, listed at 284 pounds, his conditioning, and his availability. Every time he missed time, the next LeBron conversation got quieter. The $75 million contract started feeling like a symbol of pressure rather than a reward. When Zion plays, the production is all-star caliber. The efficiency is real. The athleticism is undeniable. But the Pelicans have had to build and rebuild around a player who's been unavailable more than he's been available. That's a different kind of pressure. It's not about failing on the court. It's about a career being judged against a sample size that's never been big enough to tell the full story. The expectations didn't shrink because of the injuries. They just kept sitting there, waiting. Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons was the #1 overall pick in 2016 after being compared to LeBron James for his size and playmaking ability coming out of Louisiana State University. By 2018, he'd won Rookie of the Year. By 2021, he'd made 3 All-Star teams and earned multiple All-Defensive selections. On paper, that's a successful career. But the conversation around Ben Simmons was never really about what he did. It was always about what he wouldn't do. Across 7 NBA seasons, Simmons attempted 36 total three-pointers. 36. In a league where guards and wings are expected to stretch the floor, that number became the entire narrative. Media covered it constantly. Opposing defenses stopped guarding him from distance entirely. It wasn't just a weakness anymore. It was a strategic liability that teams could exploit every single game. The breaking point came in the 2021 playoffs against Atlanta. Game 7, late in the fourth quarter, Simmons receives the ball near the basket with a clear path and passes it away. Philadelphia loses. The backlash was immediate and massive. Simmons publicly acknowledged confidence issues. The Sixers and Simmons then went through one of the most public and drawn-out separations in recent NBA history. He held out for the entire following season, citing mental health struggle, before eventually getting traded to Brooklyn in February 2022. In Brooklyn, injuries limited him further. He played 12 games in 2022 to 23. The player who was compared to LeBron James in 2016 became a player whose availability and impact were being questioned league-wide. The Philadelphia market didn't help. It's one of the most critical sports environments in the country, and the pressure that built around his shooting limitations only intensified under that spotlight. His career didn't collapse because he was bad. It collapsed because the expectation was superstardom, and the reality was a player whose skill set had a visible ceiling that he never found a way to raise. By the way, if you guys want to subscribe, I'm going to be posting every day. Thanks. Anyways, Shaq. Shaq got drafted first overall in 1992 by the Orlando Magic as a 7-foot, 300-plus pound physical force that the NBA genuinely hadn't seen before. His rookie year, he averaged 23.4 points, 13.9 rebounds, and 3.5 blocks per game. He made the All-Star team as a rookie, which was rare at the time. From day one, the expectation wasn't that he'd be a good center. It was that he'd become the greatest center who ever played. That's a specific and heavy standard. He was being compared to Kareem, Wilt Chamberlain, and Bill Russell before he'd won anything. Orlando didn't make the finals in his first 3 seasons, and even with all-star numbers every year, the question kept coming back. Can he actually win? He signs with the Lakers in 1996, a franchise defined by championships. Magic Johnson won 5 rings there. The pressure immediately reframes itself. Good seasons aren't enough anymore. They want titles. And for 3 straight years with Los Angeles, they don't make the finals. Then 2000 through 2002 happens, 3 consecutive championships, 3 consecutive finals, MVP awards. The argument should be closed. But Phil Jackson publicly said Shaq could have been even greater if his conditioning and work ethic were different. That's the head coach of a dynasty saying his best player could have been better. And the Hack a Shaq strategy, where teams intentionally fouled him to exploit his free throw shooting, became a league-wide tactic specifically designed around his one exploitable weakness: 4 championships, 1 MVP, 15 All-Star selections. By every standard, that's a Hall of Fame career with no caveat. But the pressure Shaq carried was the pressure of being expected to be the most dominant player ever. And even winning 4 titles didn't fully satisfy that ceiling. Patrick Ewing arrived at Madison Square Garden in 1985 as the first overall pick with a label already attached to him. Savior, not just franchise player, not just star, savior of New York basketball. Ewing himself later acknowledged that he was built up that way from the moment he walked in. That's the kind of pressure that doesn't come from performance. It comes from the city, the media market, and 15 years of expectations that never changed no matter what happened. New York is the largest media market in the NBA. Madison Square Garden is the most famous arena in basketball, and the Knicks hadn't won a championship since 1973. Every season Ewing played, that context was sitting in the background. He took them to the playoffs nearly every year. He led them to the finals in 1990, 4 and 1999. 11 All-Star selections, Hall of Fame career, but his prime overlapped directly with Michael Jordan's Chicago Bulls dynasty. The Knicks got eliminated by Chicago repeatedly, and even in the seasons Jordan wasn't there, the ring never came. That became the entire narrative around Ewing's career. Not his consistency, not his durability, not the fact that he carried a team for 15 years in the hardest market in basketball, just the absence of a championship. Ewing never had a consistent elite co-star during his prime. He was expected to be a Bill Russell-level winner without Russell-level supporting casts. And even Ewing admitted publicly that not winning a championship was something that genuinely disappointed him. 15 years, same building, same pressure, same question, no ring. That's a career defined almost entirely by one missing outcome, regardless of everything else that was there. Andrew Wiggins. Andrew Wiggins came into the NBA in 2014 as the first overall pick with a nickname already waiting for him, Maple Jordan. That's the comparison that followed him before he ever played a professional game. The expectation wasn't just that he'd be a good player, it was that he'd be a franchise changer, an MVP candidate, someone who transforms an organization the way top picks are supposed to. His rookie year with Minnesota, he won Rookie of the Year in 2015. His scoring numbers were consistently strong through his early seasons, but the criticism started almost immediately, centered on efficiency, effort on defense, and impact beyond scoring. Being a number 1 pick means the bar isn't production, it's elite production, and Wiggins was producing without being elite. In 2017, Minnesota signed him to a max extension. That's the moment the pressure multiplied. A max contract on a player who hadn't proven he could carry a team shifted the narrative from promising young scorer to underachieving number 1 pick. The Timberwolves struggled. The label of disappointment started sticking publicly, even though he was putting up real numbers every night. He gets traded to Golden State in February 2020. The role changes completely. He's no longer asked to be the franchise. He's a defensive wing and secondary scorer on a team built to win. In 2022, he starts the All-Star game and contributes to a championship run. The Warriors win the title. Same player, completely different expectation level, completely different outcome. That contrast is the whole story. The pressure of being Maple Jordan made Minnesota feel like a failure. The freedom of being a supporting piece made Golden State feel like a success. One player, 2 completely different experiences of what it means to meet expectations. Victor Wembanyama. Wemby got drafted, first overall in 2023, and the language used to describe him before he played a single NBA game was unlike anything in recent memory. Multiple scouts called him the best prospect ever. Not best prospect since LeBron. Best prospect, full stop. NBA teams spent an entire season openly positioning themselves to lose games specifically for the chance to draft him, and people called it the Wemby sweepstakes without irony. He's approximately 7'4" with guard skills. The expectation isn't that he'll be a good center, it's that he'll redefine what a basketball player can be. The comparisons that got thrown around before his rookie year included Kevin Durant for skill, Rudy Gobert for defense, and Kareem for long-term ceiling. Stacking 3 all-timers into one projection for a player who hasn't played a regular season game yet is a specific kind of pressure. His early production backed the hype. He averaged 28.0 points, 11.7 rebound, and over 3.5 blocks per game. In a sample against Anthony Davis, according to StatMuse, historically rare defensive impact for someone his age. Every game got dissected as evidence for or against the generational claim. But there's already an injury narrative forming. Pre-NBA injuries included a stress fracture in his fibula, a shoulder bruise, and a finger fracture. Historically, extremely tall players have faced elevated injury risk throughout the NBA, and that context follows Wemby into every season. The pressure he carries isn't the normal pressure of a #1 pick. He's not being judged like a rookie who needs time to develop. He's being judged against an all-time great trajectory from his first professional minutes. The Spurs' entire rebuild is tied to him. The expectation isn't a few all-star appearances, it's all-time dominance. That's the standard, and it was set before he played a game. Anthony Davis came into the NBA in 2012 as the first overall pick out of Kentucky, where he'd won a national championship and averaged 4.7 blocks per game in college. The expectation was that he'd be the next great big man, the heir to the era defined by Tim Duncan and Kevin Garnett. His NBA impact was immediate. He led the league in blocks per game at 2.82 and put up historic individual performances, including a game where he recorded 36 points, 14 rebounds, 9 blocks, and 7 assists. Multiple All-NBA level seasons came early. The talent was never in question, but the pressure shifted from potential to results. In New Orleans, the team's success never materialized at the level expected. Few deep playoff runs. The narrative started building that Davis, despite elite individual numbers, couldn't carry a franchise to where it needed to go. Then the trade to Los Angeles happens. Lakers, LeBron, championship expectations immediately. 2020, they win the title. Davis averages 25.3 points and 8.4 rebounds per game in the regular season and is one of the best players in the bubble. That's the expectation met. But the injury narrative has defined everything since. Shoulder injuries, ankle injuries, back spasms, a detached retina requiring eye surgery, a hand ligament injury during the 2026 season. Across his career, Davis has missed significant stretches consistently. The phrase that follows him everywhere is, if healthy, he's a top 5 player. That sentence, as a constant companion to a career, is its own form of pressure. The talent is unquestioned. The body keeps interrupting what the talent could do. Greg Oden got taken first overall in 2007, selected ahead of Kevin Durant. At the time, the scouting consensus viewed Oden as the safer pick, a dominant two-way center who could anchor a franchise immediately. He was compared to Shaq for physical dominance, and Bill Russell for defensive impact. Portland used the top pick on him. Durant went to Seattle with the second pick. Oden never played his rookie season. Microfracture surgery on his knee kept him out the entire year. He came back in year 2, but played limited games. Year 3 brought another season-ending knee injury, then consecutive seasons lost, then a fractured patella. Portland eventually waived him after the repeated setbacks. Across his entire NBA career, Oden played 105 games. That's the whole sample. 105 games across what should have been the beginning of a long career for a #1 pick. While Oden was going through surgery after surgery, Kevin Durant was winning scoring titles, earning MVP consideration, and becoming one of the best players in the league. The comparison became unavoidable. Every time Durant made another All-Star team or won another scoring title, the 2007 draft pick conversation came back up. Oden wasn't judged against other centers who got injured. He was judged against the specific player Portland chose him over. The pressure of being a #1 pick is already significant. The pressure of being a #1 pick, taken over a player who became one of the greatest scorers ever, while your own career never materialized due to injuries, is a different category of weight entirely. His career is defined entirely by what never happened. That's a difficult thing to carry. Cooper Flagg reclassified in high school to accelerate his timeline and entered Duke already being discussed as the top prospect in his entire class. He won National Player of the Year in his only college season. He got selected first overall in the 2025 draft. And before any of that, the comparisons being made publicly included LeBron James and Kobe Bryant based on age and trajectory projections. Those comparisons were happening before his rookie NBA season started. The schedule he faced going from college to the NBA was legitimately demanding. At Duke, He played 39 games across 151 days. His rookie NBA season packed 43 games into 95 days. Within that stretch, he dealt with a sprained thumb, a sprained ankle, and shoulder soreness. The physical workload escalated faster than it typically does for young players. What made his situation unique was the role he was asked to play offensively. He was handling the ball as a primary initiator in stretches that most 19-year-old players don't get handed immediately. That's real pressure, not ceremonial. He's operating as a lead option while still being evaluated against a comparison list that includes two of the greatest players the sport has ever seen. The social media and media evaluation is also constant. Every performance gets analyzed through the lens of, is he on a generational trajectory? That's not the question most rookies face. Most rookies get evaluated on development. The flag gets evaluated on destination. He hasn't had the time yet to fully demonstrate what his career will be. But the expectations were fully formed before he played a single professional minute. Being labeled elite years before the NBA arrived meant that the pressure was already at a level that most players never experienced, and it was sitting there on day one. Kareem came into the NBA after one of the greatest college careers in history. At UCLA, he won 3 national championships. He was considered the most dominant college player the sport had produced. The question entering the NBA wasn't whether he'd be great, it was how fast he'd take over the league. His rookie year answered that immediately. 28.8 points per game, 14.5 rebounds per game. By his second season, he'd already won an MVP award. Early success at that level doesn't reduce pressure. It raises the ceiling of what's expected going forward. He won a championship with Milwaukee in 1971, then got traded to the Lakers, a franchise where championships were the baseline expectation, not the goal. Every season without a title in Los Angeles registered as a shortfall. The roster around him in the mid-1970s wasn't championship caliber, but that context didn't soften the criticism. His career numbers are historic. 6 MVP awards, which is still the NBA record, 6 championships, 19 All-Star selections, 20 seasons, 1,560 games. The skyhook became one of the most unguardable shots into basketball history, and teams built entire defensive schemes specifically trying to stop it. But he was publicly criticized throughout his career for being less outwardly expressive than fans expected from a player of his stature. Despite historic production in nearly every category, he was regularly described as difficult or cold in media coverage. Dominance at that level didn't create goodwill. It created a higher standard that he was expected to maintain for 2 decades straight. Sustaining GOAT-level expectations across 20 seasons isn't something most athletes ever face. Kareem faced it from his second year in the league onward. John Wall got drafted first overall in 2010 by Washington, a franchise that hadn't been relevant in years. He was electric immediately, an elite athlete with the speed to create in transition and the passing vision to run an offense. By 2017, he'd made 5 All-Star teams and signed a 4-year, $170 million extension, one of the largest contracts in league history at the time. That contract came with an expectation, franchise cornerstone who gets Washington to consistent playoff contention. But the injuries started stacking up. He ruptured his left Achilles tendon in January 2019. Then a bone infection in his heel required multiple procedures and kept him out through the 2019-20 season entirely. He missed almost 2 full seasons combined. Washington traded him to Houston in December 2020 as part of the Russell Westbrook deal. He then sat out the entire 2020-21 season, not playing a single game for Houston while the team decided how to move forward. Wall played 60 games for the Rockets in 2021-22, averaging 17.1 points and 6.8 assists per game, showing he could still produce. But the franchise situation in Houston was a rebuild, and his contract made him difficult to move. The Clippers signed him for the 2022-23 season. He appeared in 36 games. The gap between the $170 million franchise centerpiece expectation and the reality of his last 3 seasons is significant. He's still only in his early 30s, but the injuries and the time away reshaped what the rest of his career looked like. Washington got a 5-time All-Star. The extension got an injured player. The career sits somewhere between what it was supposed to be and what the body allowed it to become. Blake Griffin was the first overall pick in 2009, and his rookie season didn't even happen. He fractured his kneecap in the preseason and missed the entire year. Before playing a single professional minute, he was already carrying both the weight of being the top pick and the added scrutiny of an injury. The pressure doubled before it even had a chance to breathe. His actual rookie season in 2010 to 2011 was remarkable. 22.5 points per game, 12.1 rebounds per game. He won Rookie of the Year unanimously. He made the All-Star team as a rookie, the first player to do that since 2003. He put together 27 straight double-double, the longest such streak since 1968. The Clippers built their entire identity around him, and Lob City became one of the most talked about offensive concepts in the league. But that identity came with a specific expectation: championship contention. Los Angeles reached the second round only once during Griffin's prime years there. The team ceiling kept getting questioned, and Griffin's role as the franchise centerpiece meant that ceiling attached to his name. After 2018, injuries started reshaping his career. The athleticism that made him must-watch declined. He got traded to Detroit in 2018 and eventually had to reinvent his game around shooting, pick-and-roll execution, and playmaking, rather than the above-the-rim dominance that made him famous. That transition came with its own pressure. Can he still be elite without the athleticism? Became a legitimate question that followed him for years. He played for Detroit, Oklahoma City, Brooklyn, and Boston in the later stages, far from them. Franchise centerpiece status he arrived with. The career arc went from one of the most explosive rookies ever to a player searching for a role. That gap is its own story. Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant got drafted second overall in 2007, one pick behind Greg Oden. That ordering immediately created a narrative. Portland chose Oden, Seattle chose Durant. And from that moment forward, Durant had something to prove that most players never have to think about. His rookie year, he averaged 20.3 points per game, which was elite production for a 19-year-old. By his early 20s in Oklahoma City, he was winning scoring titles, putting up numbers that put him in the conversation with the best offensive players the league had ever seen. He won the MVP in 2013 to 2014, averaging 32.0 points, 7.4 rebounds, and 5.5 assists per game. His acceptance speech became one of the most watched moments in recent NBA award history. OKC had him, Russell Westbrook, and James Harden at the same time. The dynasty potential was real. They made the finals in 2012, lost to Miami in 5 games. Then Harden left in a contract dispute. The window started closing. He missed most of 2014 to 2015 with a Jones fracture in his right foot, playing only 27 games. That injury cost him a full season during what should have been a peak year. Then in 2016, he made the decision to join the Golden State Warriors, who had just finished 73-9 and beaten him in the Western Conference Finals. The backlash was immediate and loud. He went from being seen as a superstar trying to win on his own terms to being labeled a player who took the easier path. He won championships in 2017 and 2018. In 2019, he tore his Achilles in the finals against Toronto. The conversation about his legacy has never fully settled, even with multiple titles and one of the greatest individual scoring bodies of work the sport has ever seen. Derrick Rose. Derrick Rose grew up in Chicago, got drafted first overall by Chicago in 2008, and was immediately handed the responsibility of reviving a Bulls franchise that hadn't been to the finals since Michael Jordan's last championship in 1998. That's a specific and enormous weight for a 20-year-old to carry into a city that still lives in Jordan's shadow. His rookie year, he averaged 16.8 points and 6.3 assists per game. Good enough to be one of the better young point guards in the league, not good enough to quiet the expectations. The pressure kept building. Then 2010 to 2011 happened. Rose led the Bulls to the best record in the Eastern Conference at 62-20. He won the MVP award. He became the youngest MVP in NBA history at 22 years old. The trajectory pointed directly at multiple MVPs and a championship. The city of Chicago was behind him completely. April 28, 2012, first round of the playoffs against Philadelphia. Rose tears his anterior cruciate ligament. He misses the entire 2012 to 2013 season. Then in November 2013, playing for the first time since the injury, he tears the lateral meniscus in his other knee. Gone again. The injuries kept coming. Knees, ankles, repeated setbacks across consecutive seasons. By the time he was healthy enough to be consistently available, the Bulls had moved in a different direction. He got traded to New York in 2016 and then bounced to Cleveland, Minnesota, Detroit, and New York again across the back half of his career. The player who was supposed to anchor Chicago for the next decade became a journeyman averaging 15 to 18 points in a reduced role. The youngest MVP in NBA history, turned into one of the most cited examples of what injuries can take from a player at the peak of their potential. Dwight Howard. Dwight Howard got drafted first overall in 2004 directly out of high school by the Orlando Magic, the same franchise that had built around Shaq less than a decade earlier. The comparison was automatic and immediate. He was expected to become the next dominant franchise center in a city that already knew what that could look like. He was also the first high school player ever to start all 82 games as a rookie. By his third season, he was averaging 17.6 points and 12.3 rebounds per game, and leading the league in rebounds. The organization's expectation was simple. He had to become the primary offensive and defensive anchor. Everything ran through him. His peak years were genuinely elite. 3 straight Defensive Player of the Year awards from 2009 through 2011. He led the league in rebounds multiple seasons. He led the league in blocks and rebounds simultaneously at points during that stretch. In 2009, he carried Orlando past LeBron James's 66-win Cavaliers to reach the NBA Finals as the clear #1 option. They lost to the Lakers, and from that point forward, every season got framed as, why can't he win a championship? The criticism around his offensive limitations never stopped. His free throw shooting was exploited league-wide. Teams ran hack-a-Dwight strategies the same way they'd run hack-a-Shaq years earlier. Despite being one of the most dominant defenders of his era, the comparison to Shaq created an offensive standard he was never going to reach, and that gap defined the public conversation around his career. The late Orlando years brought public tension with coaches and management, eventually forcing a trade in 2012 to the Lakers. The scrutiny intensified. 8 All-Star selections, 8 All-NBA selections, 3 Defensive Player of the Year awards, a championship ring with the Lakers in 2020 as a role player. By almost any measure, it's a Hall of Fame career. But the next Shaq label made sure the conversation always returned to what he didn't do. Magic Johnson. Magic Johnson got drafted first overall in 1979 and walked straight into a Los Angeles Lakers roster that already had Kareem on it. The expectation was immediate championship delivery, not development. His rookie year, he stepped in at center during Game 6 of the NBA Finals, with Kareem unavailable, and put up 42 points, 15 rebounds, and 7 assists. The Lakers won the championship. He won Finals MVP. He was 20 years old. That's the baseline he set for himself in his first NBA season. The Showtime Lakers weren't a team where reaching the finals was the goal. Winning it was the only acceptable outcome. Magic won 5 championships across his career and earned 3 MVP awards. But even within that run of success, every season that didn't end in a title registered as a failure against the standard the franchise and the market. His entire career also operated alongside the Larry Bird rival. The Lakers versus Celtics dynamic of the 1980s wasn't just a basketball story. It was the central narrative driving the NBA's growth into a global product. Magic wasn't just carrying a team, he was carrying a portion of the league's identity. His performances shaped how basketball was marketed internationally. As a 6'9" point guard, he redefined what the position could look like. Every game he played was measured against standards that didn't exist before him. Then in November 1991, he announced publicly that he'd contracted HIV and retired immediately. He became the first globally prominent athlete to make that announcement. And the response included public fear, uncertainty from league officials, and resistance from some players when he attempted a comeback. He won MVP at the 1992 All-Star Game after returning. The pressure that came with that moment extended far beyond basketball into something much larger. Yao Ming. Yao Ming got drafted first overall in 2002 by the Houston Rockets and immediately carried a weight no other NBA player had ever been asked to carry. He wasn't just a franchise player. He was described internationally as a symbol of a new China, a representative of an entire nation on the biggest basketball stage in the world. That's not hyperbole. That's how his arrival in the NBA was framed globally. He was selected to start the All-Star game 8 times. That created a separate narrative inside the league about whether his selections were merit-based or popularity-driven. He had to perform well enough to answer that question every season. His early career faced skepticism about whether he could physically handle the NBA's speed and physicality. He answered that quickly, developing into a high-level scorer and efficient post player. The Rockets had real playoff aspirations built around him. In 2009, they advanced past the first round for the only time during his career. But across his last 6 seasons, he missed 250 games due to chronic foot and ankle injuries, a broken foot, multiple surgeries, setbacks that kept interrupting what was developing into a legitimate case as one of the best centers of his era. He retired after 9 NBA seasons. His peak suggested a player capable of sustaining elite production for years. The injuries made that impossible to confirm. The pressure he carried came from every direction simultaneously. Franchise expectations in Houston, national expectations from China, the all-star legitimacy debate, and the constant physical interruptions that prevented him from building the sustained body of work that would have answered every question. His career is defined by a ceiling that was never fully reached, not because of effort, but because of circumstances that kept pulling him back. Ben Wallace. Nobody in NBA history ever posted a defensive rating of 87.48 for a full season. Ben Wallace did it in 2003 to 2004. That's the lowest ever recorded. He followed it with an 84 defensive rating in the 2004 playoff, also historically elite. And he did all of this without being a scorer. We're talking 7 to 10 points per game during his peak years. That's it. But 4 Defensive Player of the Year awards in 5 seasons says everything you need to know about how dominant he actually was. In the 2004 finals against the Lakers, Wallace averaged 14.3 rebounds and 2.4 blocks per playoff game while holding that entire Los Angeles offense to 81.8 points per game. He gave up roughly 100 pounds and multiple inches to Shaq in that series. Didn't matter. Shaq still got his points, but Detroit's defense, anchored by Wallace, held the Lakers to 89.9 points in those 5 games. Before Wallace arrived, Detroit was a bottom-tier defensive team. The moment he got there, they became elite. No double teams required as the primary strategy. He handled the opposing big man alone every single night. He could guard post scorers, pick and roll centers, and switch on to forwards. Elite offensive players weren't just slowed down, they changed what shots they even attempted because of where he was standing. That's what makes Ben Wallace one of the rarest players ever. Defense alone, no scoring required, created championship-level value. Shaq, teams literally fouled him on purpose before he even touched the ball. That's the hack a Shaq strategy. And it became a league-wide conversation because normal half-court defense simply couldn't stop him efficiently. The only plan that made logical sense was sending him to the free throw line instead of letting him post up. Think about it. A player so dominant that intentional fouling became the preferred defensive option. His career averages sat at 23.7 points, 10.9 rebounds, and over 2 blocks per game. He shot between 58 and 60% from the field during his prime, almost entirely from inside scoring. Even against Ben Wallace, widely considered the greatest individual defender of that era, Shaq averaged 27.1 points and 11.4 rebounds in early matchups. Elite defense slowed him. It didn't stop him. Post entries, forced help rotations, perimeter collapses, and open shooters as a direct result of his presence. Opposing teams burned multiple centers, just absorbing fouls trying to contain him. Starting bigs were in foul trouble constantly. Rosters were literally constructed differently because of him. Teams carried extra big men specifically to absorb contact from Shaq, and even that wasn't enough to solve the problem. He remained on the floor despite free throw struggle, because his scoring efficiency near the rim made him impossible to bench. His presence alone changed how franchises built their rosters, how coaches drew up game plans, and how the league thought about big man defense entirely. James Johnson. Most players in NBA history built their reputations through stats. James Johnson built his through something the box score doesn't measure. He's a trained, mixed martial artist with a verified background in kickboxing and multiple martial arts disciplines, coming from a family deeply involved in combat sports instruction and competition. That's not a storyline, that's documented reality. On the court, his value was never about scoring volume or high usage. His career was defined by defensive assignments, physical matchups, and enforcing presence in a league full of elite athletes. He guarded wings, switched onto bigs, set contact heavy screens, and drove into defenders without hesitation. But the real intimidation factor goes beyond basketball. Among players league-wide, Johnson carried a reputation as one of the least likely people anyone would challenge physically. That reputation alone changed how altercations developed around it. NBA confrontations are already rare, but Johnson's presence on the floor consistently acted as a deterrent. Teams used him in heated games, specifically because of the stabilizing effect his reputation created. Nobody wanted that situation to escalate when James Johnson was standing nearby. That's a real, functional role. It's not about highlight plays or all-star appearances. It's about the fact that real-world fighting credibility translates directly into behavioral deterrence on an NBA court. Johnson sits in a completely separate category from every other name on this list. By the way, if you guys want to subscribe, I'm going to be posting every day. Thanks. Anyways, David Robinson, 7'1", elite speed, elite agility, and the coordination of someone half his size. That combination almost never exists at center, and Robinson had all of it. He averaged 3 blocks per game for his career and finished with nearly 3,000 total, placing him in the top tier of rim protection volume all time. He won Defensive Player of the Year in 1992, and the San Antonio Spurs became contenders almost immediately after he arrived, which isn't a coincidence. His defensive impact wasn't just about shot blocking, it was about versatility. Robinson is one of the only centers in NBA history to record a quadruple-double that included 10 blocks in a single game. He could protect the rim, recover to the perimeter, and chase down contest opportunities in transition at a speed most bigs couldn't match. And then there's the offensive side, which made him even more frightening as a matchup. He averaged 21.1 points and 10.7 rebounds for his career. He scored 71 points in a single game, one of the highest individual scoring outputs in league history. So defenders weren't just dealing with one of the best shot blockers alive. They were dealing with someone who could pour in 70 points on his best night. That combination of rim deterrence, mobility, and offensive ceiling made Robinson a genuinely unique problem for every team he faced across his entire career. Karl Malone, 6'9", 259 pounds, 18 seasons, 36,928 career points. That's the foundation right there. Karl Malone is second on the all-time scoring list, and he got there by absorbing contact on literally every single possession for nearly 2 decades. Post-ups, pick-and-roll finishes, transition runs to the rim, constant screens, offensive rebound. Every part of his game involved a collision. 3-time all-defensive first team in an era defined by hand-checking and heavy post contact, where defenders were allowed to be physical in ways the modern game doesn't permit. 14 All-Star selection, 11 All-NBA first team honor. He maintained elite production into his late 30s, which is nearly impossible for a player whose entire game was built on absorbing physical punishment nightly. Most players who play that style break down. Malone didn't. He stayed productive at the highest level, longer than almost anyone in league history at his position. In his prime alongside John Stockton in Utah, the Jazz consistently ranked among the top offenses in the league, built almost entirely around Malone functioning as the primary collision point on every possession. Opponents didn't just have to guard him, they had to be willing to take a beating every time they tried. His durability and sustained output over nearly 2 decades, combined with his physical style, made him one of the most punishing matchups any big man ever faced. Steven Adams. Jimmy Butler said after taking a screen from Steven Adams that he thought his life was over. That quote alone tells you everything. Adams is widely considered by peers to be the strongest player in the NBA, and that reputation isn't just word of mouth. He averaged 4.6 offensive rebounds per game in a single season, which is an extraordinary number driven almost entirely by his ability to physically move people off their spots. His wingspan sits around 7'5". His strength grade in scouting evaluations was rated at the maximum level among centers. Opponents described his grip during box outs as an iron claw, which is a direct quote from players who went up against him. His screens are documented as bone crushing, and that's not exaggeration. That's how players around the league describe the experience. He doesn't need to score for his presence to impact every single possession. Paint control, screen frequency, rebounding battles, physical positioning, all of it happens constantly, regardless of whether he's a primary offensive option. The intimidation isn't built on highlight dunks or scoring average. It's built on the fact that sharing a court with Adams means absorbing physical contact at a level most players simply aren't prepared for. Consensus strongest player in the league is a rare title. Adams held it for years, and the on-court consequences were measurable every single night he played. Bill Laimbeer, 1,068 career game, 79 or more games in 13 straight seasons, including multiple 82-game seasons, a streak of 685 consecutive games played, one of the longest in NBA history. That durability alone tells you how physically committed Laimbeer was, because he played every night in the most brutal era the league has ever seen. He averaged 12.9 points and 9.7 rebounds, logged over 10,400 career rebounds, and more than 13,700 points. He led the NBA in rebounding in 1985 to 86 and led the league in total defensive rebounds from 1982 through 1990, starting center on back-to-back championship teams in 1989 and 1990, sitting at the core of the Bad Boys Pistons, alongside Isaiah Thomas and Dennis Rodman. The entire Detroit identity was built on physical defense and intentional intimidation, and Laimbeer was the enforcer at the center of it. He accumulated 3,633 personal fouls, and his reputation for flagrant contact, late hits, and undercutting drivers was documented and widely discussed across the league. But here's what separates him from other physical players. His strategy was explicitly psychological. He stated openly that his goal was to provoke reactions and get opponents focused on retaliation instead of execution. He'd initiate contact, then exaggerate the reaction to draw fouls. It wasn't just physical, it was deliberate mental warfare, and it worked. Charles Oakley, over 1,200 career games, 9.7 points, and 9.5 rebounds per game across his career. Those numbers sound quiet until you understand what his actual job was. Oakley wasn't on the court to score. He was on the court to protect the people who did. He played alongside Michael Jordan in Chicago and Patrick Ewing in New York, and his role on both teams was the same: guard the stars, absorb the physical punishment, deliver hard fouls when necessary. Multiple seasons, averaging 10 or more rebounds per game, built entirely through elite box outs and physical positioning rather than athleticism or length advantages. Every screen he set was designed to make contact. Every rebounding battle was contested physically. Opponents who tried to bully his teammates ran directly into Oakley, and that was a very deliberate part of how both the Bulls and Knicks operated. He's widely recognized as one of the physically toughest players in NBA history by players who shared the court with him, and that reputation directly affected how opposing teams approached escalation. If things got physical, and you were the one who started it, Oakley was the response. That expectation changed how games were played around him. The enforcer archetype in the NBA is rare and valuable, and Oakley is the clearest example of what it looks like at its most effective. No finesse, no spacing, no scoring dependence, just pure physical enforcement every single possession. Ron Artest, Defensive Player of the Year in 2004. 9 all-defensive team selections across his career. He regularly guarded Kobe Bryant, Paul Pierce, and Tracy McGrady, the most difficult perimeter assignment you could get in that era, combining strength, lateral quickness, and constant hand activity to make those matchups miserable. 6'7", over 250 pounds at his peak. He could body wings, guard forwards, and deny entry passes with the kind of physical pressure that bent offensive schemes entirely. But the defining moment of his career as an intimidation story isn't a defensive play. It's November 19th, 2004, Indiana at Detroit. A foul on Ben Wallace escalated into what became known as the Malice at the Palace. Artest entered the stands after being hit by a drink thrown from the crowd. The incident involved players, fans, and required police intervention to contain. The result was the longest suspension in NBA history at that point, 73 games, plus the entire playoff. The league responded by implementing stricter security protocols and stronger physical separation between players and fans. The entire structure of NBA arena operations changed directly because of that night. And that event, combined with his genuine elite defensive ability, created something almost no other player in league history has produced. Opponents weren't just concerned about his basketball. They were aware that the line between composure and chaos around Artest was genuinely unpredictable, and that uncertainty affected how every game around him felt. Dennis Rodman, 2 Defensive Player of the Year awards, 7 All-Defensive First Team selections, 7 consecutive rebounding titles from 1992 through 1998, career average of 13.1 rebounds per game, and nearly 12,000 total career boards. Those numbers represent something most people don't fully appreciate, which is possession control at an all-time level. Every rebound Rodman grabbed ended an opponent's chance to score and created one for his team. His rebound rate led the league in multiple seasons at historically high margin. He guarded primary scorers, switched on to bigger front court players, and did it all in an era when that kind of positional versatility simply wasn't expected from a power forward. 5 championships, 1989, 1990 with the Bad Boys Pistons, then 1996, 1990, 7, and 1998 as the defensive anchor alongside Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen in Chicago. Two entirely different dynasty teams built their defense around him. He dove for loose balls constantly, fought for every box out on every possession, and accumulated technical fouls through a combination of physical confrontations and behavior that made opponents genuinely uncertain about what he might do next. The trash talk, the physical disruption, the unpredictability, all of it layered on top of legitimate elite defensive production. Rodman controlled the possession battle more consistently than almost any player in NBA history, and he did it entirely without being a scoring option. Kobe Bryant, 25 points, 5.2 rebounds, 4.7 assists per game across his career, 9 all-defensive first-team selections, which ties the all-time record, 12 total all-defensive team appearances, multiple seasons, averaging over 1.5 steals per game, and a peak of nearly 41 minutes per game in his prime, while carrying both the primary scoring load and the toughest defensive assignment on the other end. In 2005 to 2006, he averaged 35.4 points per game, one of the highest single-season scoring averages in modern NBA history. And then he went and guarded the opposing team's best perimeter scorer in the same game. That's the part that made Kobe genuinely intimidating as a matchup. Opponents weren't just trying to stop him on one end, they had to execute their entire offensive game plan, knowing he might be the one guarding them. His isolation-heavy, contested mid-range, late clock shot creation forced defenders into one-on-one coverage that most couldn't handle, while double teams opened up the rest of the floor. 20 seasons with one franchise, Defensive Player of the Year, voting appearances multiple times, championship context amplified everything, 5 titles, where half-court focus in slower playoff games made his defensive assignments even more impactful. The combination of elite scoring volume and genuine all-time defensive recognition is something the NBA has almost never seen at the same time in the same player. Larry Bird, 3,098 career steals, which ranks him among the all-time leaders. 3 all-defensive second-team selections, multiple seasons shooting at 50-45-90 efficiency levels, the benchmark for elite offensive precision. He could score, pass, and rebound at a high level simultaneously, which forced defensive coordinators into impossible choices about how to guard him on every possession. But the intimidation piece that separates Bird from other elite scorers of his era is documented and specific. He would tell defenders exactly where he was going to shoot the ball before he took the shot, and then he'd make it. Michael Jordan, who was not known for handing out compliments easily, called Bird the greatest trash talker he ever faced. That's a direct statement from the greatest player in NBA history. Bird would ask coaches and opponents mid-game who was guarding him, sometimes before drilling the shot he'd already announced. The psychological effect of that behavior on defenders was real and measurable. Players already dealing with the difficulty of guarding an elite shooter were also managing active mental interference on every possession. His anticipation and positioning on defense generated steals at a rate that surprised opponents who assumed his value was purely offensive. 1,556 career steals for a forward in that era is significant. Bird's intimidation was built on precision, prediction, and the unique ability to win the mental battle before the physical one even started. Kevin Garnett, 26,071 career points, 14,662 rebounds, 5,445 assists, 21 seasons, one of the only players in NBA history to win both the Most Valuable Player award and Defensive Player of the Year. He guarded centers, power forwards, and wings, legitimately, not just in a switching scheme, but as the primary assignment. His wingspan and mobility allowed him to contest at the rim and recover to perimeter scorers in the same possession, something almost no big man in the league's history could do consistently. Career averages of 10 rebounds, over 1 steal, and over 1 block per game, a combination that's extremely rare for a front court player. And then in 2007 to 2008, his first season in Boston, the Celtics went from a middle-tier defensive team to the number 1 defense in the entire NBA. That's not a small change. That's a franchise transformation in one season, directly tied to his arrival. He called coverages. He directed teammates on every possession. He functioned as a defensive coordinator on the floor, not just a player. And the intensity never stopped. Opponents faced nonstop engagement from him. From the opening tip, verbal pressure, physical contests, active denial, even off the ball. He sprinted baseline to baseline on every play. He contested low probability shots, because the effort was constant, regardless of circumstance. That relentless motor combined with genuine defensive versatility made Garnett one of the most exhausting matchups any player ever faced. Michael Jordan, Defensive Player of the Year in 1988, 9 all-defensive first-team selections, tying the all-time record, 3.2 steals per game in that same 1987-88 season, which is elite production for a guard by any historical standard. Career averages of over 2 steals per game, maintained consistently across his prime years. He led the league in steals multiple times and posted strong block numbers for a guard, which is extraordinarily rare. And while doing all of that defense, he was simultaneously leading the entire NBA in scoring. That's the piece that made Jordan genuinely unique among intimidating players. He wasn't just physically dominant on one end, he was the best player on both ends at the same time. Opponents knew he was going to guard their best perimeter scorer while also leading his team's offense. That dual pressure created a psychological weight that no other player in league history replicated at the same level. He used defense to create offense directly, turning steals into fast breaks, converting opponent mistakes into immediate scoring opportunities. In the 1996 finals, when Gary Payton was assigned to guard him in games 4 through 6 and held him to 23.7 points on 36.7% shooting, Jordan still averaged 27.3 points for the entire series. Elite defense slowed him. Nothing stopped him. Every opponent faced constant pressure offensively, defensively, from the exact same player every single night. Gary Payton, the first point guard in NBA history to win Defensive Player of the Year. He did it in 1996, and no other point guard matched that award for decades after. 9 all-defensive first-team selections, tying the all-time record held alongside Jordan and Kobe. Nicknamed the Glove for how completely he suffocated opposing ball handlers. He led the league with 2.9 steals per game in 1996 and finished his career ranked among the all-time leaders in total steals. His rebound numbers were also high for a guard, which reflected his physical positioning and body strength advantages over smaller point guard. He applied full court pressure, denied entry passes, and disrupted ball handling using a combination of lateral quickness and body strength that most guards simply couldn't match physically. He said directly in interviews that his goal was to get opponents out of their game, mentally, not just physically. Trash talk was a deliberate weapon, constant during games, designed to pull opponents away from execution and toward frustration. In the 1996 finals against Michael Jordan, when Payton took over the primary defensive assignment in games 4 through 6, Jordan's efficiency dropped to 23.7 points on 36.7% shooting during that stretch. Holding Jordan below his average in the finals is one of the most documented defensive achievements at the guard position in NBA history. Payton combined physical pressure and psychological disruption every single possession in a way no other point guard has consistently replicated. Dikembe, 4 Defensive Player of the Year awards, tied for the most in NBA history. He finished in the top 3 of DPOY, voting for 9 consecutive seasons from 1994 through 2002, 6 all-defensive team selections across his career, 3,289 career blocks, which made him second on the all-time list at the time of his retirement. Career average of 2.8 blocks per game, with a peak season of 4.5, which led the entire league. 7'2", elite reach, elite wingspan, and the timing to use all of it late rather than early, which is what made his contest so difficult to avoid. He didn't have to jump first. He waited, extended, and rejected shots that looked like they'd already cleared the rim. Opponents changed their shot selection entirely. When Dikembe was in the paint, drivers kicked out. Post players faded to mid-range. The rim wasn't a viable option. His career average of 10.3 rebounds per game added to that paint control, ending possessions before second chances became available. He was also known for physical elbow contact and interior collisions that created documented injuries in multiple opponents over the course of his career. And then there's the finger. Wag, the signature move after blocks that became so prevalent, it eventually drew rule enforcement attention from the league. Dikembe didn't just block shots. He made the entire process of attacking the rim feel psychologically dangerous for any opponent who tried. LeBron James, 6'9", over 250 pounds, and the ability to play and defend every position from point guard to power forward at an elite level. 6 all-defensive team selections throughout his career averages of 27 plus points per game, placing him at the top of the all-time scoring list. Over 7 assists per game, which means he functions as the primary ball handler and playmaker on top of everything else. He's among the all-time leaders in playoff points, assists, and minutes played, meaning the intimidation factor has been sustained across more than 20 years at the highest level of competition. His transition defense, specifically the chase down block, became one of the most recognizable individual plays in the sport because of the frequency and the athleticism required to execute it at his size. Those plays directly reduced fast break efficiency for opponents because players changed their decisions knowing he could track them down from behind. Offensively, every possession involving LeBron requires a response from the defense. Double teams, collapse the paint, help defenders rotate early. The entire defensive structure bends toward him because no single defender can manage the combination of his size, speed, playmaking, and scoring. He was the primary ball handler for championship teams at age 35 in 2020 when he averaged 25.3 points, 7.8 rebounds, and 10.2 assists in the regular season. Sustained, elite production for 2 decades at that usage level is something the NBA has never tracked in any other player. Giannis, 6'11", over 240 pounds, 7'3", wingspan, and a stride length that covers distance faster than any forward the league has ever tracked. Defensive Player of the Year in 2020, with multiple all-defensive first-team selections to go with it. His combination of rim pressure and transition speed creates a problem that defenses have never fully solved. Driving against Giannis means either absorbing contact from a 240-pound forward, moving at full speed, or pulling up early and settling for a worse shot. Neither option is good. He led the league in paint scoring across multiple seasons, averaging 30-plus points in back-to-back campaigns, and his free throw attempt rate reflects exactly how often defenses had to make physical contact just to slow him down. 1+ blocks per game across his career, with a particular impact on help side rotations and weak side shot contests. In the 2021 finals against the Phoenix Suns, he averaged 35.2 points, 13.2 rebounds, and 5 assists per game, carrying Milwaukee to the championship while also anchoring the defense on the other end. That's the full package: elite scorer, physical rim attacker, help side shot blocker, and transition threat, all in one player who you can't match up against with any conventional defensive alignment. Teams have tried collapsing the paint, sending early help, and doubling on the catch. Nothing has consistently worked because his physical profile doesn't match anything the NBA has seen before at his position. Victor Wembanyama, 7'4", with a wingspan that approaches 8 feet, one of the highest standing reach measurements ever recorded for an NBA player, combined with guard-level mobility. That combination has never existed before in professional basketball history. In his rookie season, he averaged 3.6 blocks per game, which led the entire NBA. He also averaged approximately 1.2 steals per game, making him one of the only centers ever to produce elite numbers in both categories simultaneously. Those aren't just impressive statistics. They represent what happens to offensive game plans when Wemby is on the floor. Drivers altered their attack angles. Post players avoided the paint. Floaters replaced drives. The shot attempts closest to the rim decreased, not just because of actual blocks, but because of the spatial deterrence his presence created before any contact occurred. He doesn't need to jump early. His length allows late contests from angles that most defenders can't reach at all, leading to rejections from behind and from the side that feel impossible until you understand his reach. The San Antonio Spurs defense improved measurably with him on the court compared to his time on the bench during his rookie year. Opponents didn't avoid him because he was fast or strong. They avoided him because his physical dimensions removed portions of the court from being usable. A 7'4" player who can also step out to the perimeter changes what offensive teams can realistically attempt on every single possession. He's a spatial problem that the NBA hasn't encountered before. Zach Randolph, multiple seasons averaging 20 or more points and 10 or more rebounds. Every single one of those points came from low post contact, offensive rebounding, and interior physicality in an era where that style of play was already declining across the league. Randolph didn't operate above the rim or in transition. His entire game existed below the rim in the most physically contested space on the court, where he used strength, balance, and leverage to produce at an elite level regardless of who was guarding him. In documented matchups against Kevin Garnett, one of the greatest defensive big men in NBA history, Randolph consistently produced 20-plus point games and double-digit rebounds. Elite defense wasn't a solution to him. It was just a harder version of the same physical battle he was already winning every night. In the Memphis versus Los Angeles Clippers playoff series, Randolph was the central figure in multiple on-court altercations that defined the physical tone of the entire matchup. The grit and grind. Memphis' identity was built around defense and interior toughness, with Randolph as the primary offensive force at the center of that system. Every possession he was involved in required a defender to make a physical choice: step in and absorb contact, or give ground and let him operate. There was no clean option against him because his game had no element that could be taken away through positioning or athleticism. It was always going to be a contact situation, and he was always going to win that battle. Alonzo Mourning, 2 Defensive Player of the Year awards, 1999 and 2000, 2 seasons leading the NBA in blocks, 2 All-Defensive First-Team selections, 2,356 career blocks at 2.8 per game, with peak seasons reaching 3.7 to 3.9 per game at the top of the league. He also led the NCAA in blocks as a freshman, so the rim protection was present before the NBA even had a chance to evaluate it. In his best stretches, he averaged approximately 21 points, 10 rebounds, and nearly 4 blocks simultaneously, meaning he was a first-team caliber offensive option and the most dominant shot blocker in the league at the exact same time. Drivers attacking the paint against Miami knew what was waiting. Mourning's timing and length combined with his physical intensity made the rim a genuinely dangerous place to go. Opponents consistently settle for mid-range attempts and perimeter shots rather than challenge him directly, which is the most concrete evidence of rim deterrence that exists. He was also involved in multiple high-profile on-court altercations, most notably against the New York Knicks, which added a physical volatility element to his presence beyond just shot blocking. And then he returned from a serious kidney disease diagnosis that threatened his career entirely and still produced 2.7 blocks per game as a reserve in 2005 to 2006. His intimidation factor didn't decline when his role did. The presence and the production stayed, even after everything his body went through. If you enjoyed this, I'm going to be posting a lot here. I would greatly appreciate it if you could subscribe. Thanks for watching.